So, thank you, President Evans, members of the board. It is our pleasure to introduce our FIAC leadership and team members, and we have a very extensive report, and I'll turn it over to our team members.
All right, thank you. I'm going to be a little fluid in movement today, like I was the last time, but we'll start off sitting down. So I'm here today with Christina DeMonte and Joseph Jefferson of the Facility Advisory Committee. They were the co-chairpersons. I also have Mr. Prue and Mr. Rollins here to assist me throughout the presentation. Back about 2 years ago, almost, in 2023, the Board of Education voted to close Hickory and Fountain Rock Elementary upon the opening of the new Downsville Pike Elementary School. Just over a year ago, I'm going to move this down, sorry. Just over a year ago, March of 2025, the board issued a charge to create a development of a new anticipated Downsville Pike Elementary School attendance zone, and to study and recommend changes, if any, to other elementary school attendance zones within the county. The 205-page report, not including the appendices that you all received, is a reflection of that process and that work from this committee. It has been separated into an executive summary, background, the FIAC process, a summary of the committee's discussion, along with the methodology, all the assumptions that they made during this process, the 14 boundary realignment recommendations that we will touch on, and then an appendix. As we go through this presentation, I'm going to touch on certain components of each of the recommendations, not everything, but I'm going to try to hit some of the highlights. And if you watch the presentation, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the relevant page numbers if you want to go and look at that particular recommendation or something that we're discussing or review it further, along with anyone. Thank you. It might do some feedback if I have to talk from here. Let me shut this off so I don't do that real quick. Sorry. Since March, when the charge was issued, this committee has met 8 times. They've reviewed and discussed all elementary school facilities. They utilized 6 working documents that have all been published online on the Facility Enrollment Advisory Committee's webpage. They considered 22 different attendance zone realignment options during this process, and they did all of that in accordance with the charge and board policy JCA and regulation JCAR. Back in October, at a similar work session, the committee presented a preliminary progress report that included 13 recommendations. After that presentation, they went back, they deliberated the board's comments, they reevaluated those recommendations with updated enrollment figures, and on February 4th, they voted unanimously on 14 separate recommendations. So each recommendation that we'll be presenting today had a unanimous vote from the committee to present this to the board. 12 of the recommendations are exactly the same as what we presented to you in October. The only thing that's been updated was the most recent enrollment that we tallied in September of this past year in 2025. One recommendation was revised, and it'll have a little orange square at the top of it, and I'll point it out when we get to it through this presentation. And there was one new recommendation, 14th recommendation that the committee came up with. So as I mentioned, throughout the process, they reviewed 2 different enrollments, official enrollments, as they were counted. The committee looked at the kindergarten through grade 5 enrollment only, and the kindergarten through grade 5 state-rated capacity. That's discussed a little bit in both the background on pages 8 and 9 of the report and in the methodology section of the report. Every recommendation in this report identifies and reviews all 10 considerations from the board policy JCA and the charge. So we go down through, and I have them here, I won't read through them all, but every recommendation does identify them all. And in the board's charge, it had identified that while each of the factors are to be considered, it may be impossible to reconcile all of the considerations. So the committee, during their process, came up with what they considered to be the best and the most prominent considerations for each and every recommendation. Kind of going through a summary of the discussion, which can be found on pages 12 through 17. All of the recommendations were reviewed with WCPS instructional, academic, and transportation staff. The final 14 recommendations recommends a reassignment of approximately 12.1% of our projected K-5 total in 2027. Just over half of that are from the closing Hickory and Fountain Rock Elementary School facilities. So the committee took a very considerate approach when they went through this process to really make thoughtful cuts and thoughtful recommendations. The report creates a new Downsville Pike Elementary School. When I did that, and I could say it's air quotes, or if anyone wants some comedic relief today, rabbit ears, Downsville Pike. Of course, that's not the official name of this new school. That's the construction we have occurring out in front of this building right now. The board has obviously set up a committee to come up with naming that facility and coming up with a formal name. But for the purposes of this report, and as identified in here, they call it Downsville Pike, and we put that in quotes so everyone knows that's just a temporary name to designate what that facility is and where students could potentially go. The recommendations in this report fill that facility to 100% of its K-5 capacity. That still leaves 120 or 6 pre-K classrooms that can be adjusted administratively to offer additional space if it is needed. It also offers flex spaces and a larger course space that could add a future 5th round. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit later on in the presentation. But that was one of the considerations of this committee. So there's still almost 20% of this facility that can be administratively adjusted to add additional capacity if we see any type of enrollment need. The proposed attendance boundary feeds 1 middle school, Springfield Middle, 1 high school, Williamsport High School. It is projected to have a 61.7 free and reduced meal rate. In comparison to the countywide K through 12 average, the countywide number is 53.8 this year. It was 60.6 last year, so we feel like that's a fairly good representation of the county. It's projected to have a minority student population of 37.6%. And this past year, our K through 5 minority student population was 49.6. Again, we felt like it was pretty close with what we're seeing on a countywide basis. 14 recommendations of this report also completely reassign the existing Fountain Rock and Hickory Elementary attendance zones. They provide enrollment relief to McKay-Dowbell Elementary, Potomac Heights Elementary, and Rockland Woods Elementary School. They do that by utilizing existing seat capacity at Bester Elementary, Pangbourne Elementary, and our newest elementary school, Sharpsburg Elementary, that was constructed in 2020 and has available seat capacity, and we'll talk about that as we go through. Additionally, it reduces the secondary feeder pattern at Lincolnshire Elementary School, which I'll talk about in recommendation number 3, and kind of alleviates some potential future redistricting risks from that facility moving forward. It projects a change of less than 6% free and reduced meal student population for all the impacted facilities and a less than 5% change in the minority student population for all the facilities. There's also 2 recommendations that addresses and resolves existing physical elementary attendance boundary issues. And finally, as identified in the October presentation, it provides enrollment relief to Salem Avenue Elementary by the Jonathan Hager Elementary Addition Project that is currently scheduled to open in August of 2028. As a reminder, that project came about in the 2025 Educational Facility Master Plan. It was approved by the board. It was approved in the FY27 state and local capital improvement program. It's currently shown as funded in the local capital improvement program. And at the last board meeting, I believe the board just awarded the project to Bushy Fight Moore Architects to start design to bring this, keep it on schedule. So in fact, we're starting educational specification meetings this week. Okay, looking at the executive summary in your report, and this is on pages 1 through 7, let's give a brief highlight of the overall impact of the recommendations, but the numbers are not complete, or the story is not completely just in the numbers. So for instance, if we look at Bester Elementary, currently Bester is projected to open in 2027 with a 70% K-5 state-rated capacity. Through the recommendations of this report, we're utilizing the capacity, and it would now open with 86% of its adjusted K-5 state-rated capacity. It does that by providing some enrollment relief to McKay-Dowbell Elementary. If you look a little further down, you'll see it's currently projected to be at 114% of its K-5 state-rated capacity, and with recommendation number 9, one of the 2 going to Bester, it would now be at 93% of its adjusted K-5 state-rated capacity. Kind of going down through the list, and again, just a summary of the impact of all 14 recommendations. Downsville Pike, again, would open at 566, or 2 under the 100% K-5 state-rated capacity, again, retaining those 6 pre-K classrooms and 120 pre-K seats that can be administratively changed or adjusted as needed. It also has the ability to add a 5th round, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go to some of those recommendations and the rationale of the committee. Moving down, Eastern Elementary and Ruth A. Monroe Primary on the next page, along with Greenbrier, has an administrative boundary line adjustment that impacts 0 students. So there's no change in the K-5 SRC. However, it does set the future boards up for a better position for enrollment at those facilities, and we'll talk about that when we get to that recommendation. The recommendations have closed Fountain Rock and Hickory. One of the things I want to point out on Fountain Rock, you can see the current projected enrollment at Fountain Rock is 274 K-5 students in 2027. The committee is recommending moving 324. That's 50 more students. As part of the background information, the committee, when they made recommendations, they're telling you how many students reside in those areas today. So at Fountain Rock, we're expecting the enrollment to come down in the out years based on the rural nature of some of the landscape. The committee utilized worst-case scenarios for each of the recommendations, again, trying to figure out where it could possibly go and how to alleviate having to come back in the future for future redistricting efforts if they could take care of it today. So that's an important thing to kind of point out. Jonathan Hager currently is projected, as it is today, at 112% of its K-5 SRC, part of the reason we're looking at the addition and moving forward with that process. With the recommendation in this report, it makes it a whopping 142%. However, once the addition is completed in 2028, as long as it moves forward on schedule, it would put it back down to 87% of its adjusted K-5 capacity. And that's why we have little asterisks at the bottom to identify that important aspect. Looking at the balance of the schools, Lincolnshire Elementary was kind of funny how it worked through. It was 310 students proposed to go in, 310 students proposed to come out. That was completely coincidental. We'll talk about the needed recommendations for that area. We're bringing out 3 developments from Lincolnshire that could impact it in the future, and we're taking them over to Downsville Pike, which would be better able to handle it. However, it stays at 94% of its projected K-5 capacity moving forward. Pangbourne is currently projected to open at 92% of its K-5 state-rated capacity. But as you see right below it, Potomac Heights is at 114% of it without any recommendations. So by these recommendations, we are now bringing them both back to 99 and 98% respectively. We're balancing out that enrollment. And we're also reducing the number of splits of an existing community within the county. And we'll talk about that when we get to that recommendation in this presentation. Rockland Woods was currently projected to be at 96%, but when the committee went back and met and we reviewed this year's enrollment, we noticed some spikes in the lower grade. Some of that is due to the Westfields development building out. Some of that's due to the new Carriage Hill development. Revised enrollment projections that will come through this year are going to show that number go up. It's going to be over 100% in 2027, which is partly why there was a revision to the recommendations. And I'll talk about that when we get to number 7. But right now, we're currently projecting to show some relief. So even though it says that Rockland Woods is at 93%, it probably will be more like 96, 97% in 2027 when we get the revised projections here in a couple weeks. However, the committee, we wanted to make sure they were apprised of the information, and as part of going through this process, we went over how projections are generated, and that made it a lot nicer to talk about these enrollment numbers when we reviewed them last fall. Salem Avenue is currently projected to be 100% of its state-rated capacity. We would see enrollment relief there through the Jonathan Hager Elementary project that we talked about on the prior slide, and I'll touch more on that when we get to recommendation number 13. I'll speak about that more in depth. Sharpsburg Elementary currently is projected to be less than 80% full in 2027. With the recommendations, we would fill it up to 92%. Again, this is in an area where there's currently no residential development plan, so we're utilizing seat capacity at one of our newest schools. Now, it's a little bit smaller than what Downsville Pike is. It's a 3-round school. But we would be utilizing existing seat capacity that is there today as part of this process. And then Williamsport Elementary has 2 recommendations. Both are kind of administrative adjustments. It only impacts 2 potential students and really has no impact whatsoever to the adjusted SRC. What I am going to do is I'm going to try this, or if it doesn't work, then I'll come back and sit down and I'll have to figure it out. Hopefully, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay, we'll go through. I brought my little pointing stick because everybody loves it when I do that. I'm going to apologize for doing this behind you guys. I'm just going to go through and touch on some of the brief components of each recommendation. It's 14, and I promise I will try to be quick. Recommendation number 1 reassigns approximately 310 K-5 Hickory Elementary students from Hickory Elementary to Lincolnshire Elementary School. The 7-year average of this is 307 students. It's been increasing. Excuse me. They're going to ask me to juggle all this next. That's going to be the fun part. Okay. Go with that. Yeah, you know what? We might just put this down and I'll come back and I'll just use my finger to point as needed. Sorry. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty much the balance of the Hickory Elementary attendance zone. I'm going to go ahead and flash forward a little bit to kind of show the area. If you look, the red line that goes across, that is Route 11. We have Interstate 70 here, 81 going north. As you can kind of see up towards the north part of this area, it's the Valley Mall, Lowe's, Sam's Club, kind of on the north side of Halfway Boulevard. This area has 2 developments that was identified within it. To the left side or the northwest side of Interstate 81, that is the Lakeside development. And that was part of the reason that we saw the increase in enrollment from the last 7 years. We saw that number go up. That development built out. There's 3 units that remain to be built in this area. So we were watching that. There's also a development that is located right here beside of Hickory Elementary. It's a development in concept. It's the townhomes at Rock Springs. 123 may or may not happen, but it's something the committee's watching. And then this entire area to the south of Route 11 is basically right by the Lincolnshire Elementary attendance zone. In fact, of the 310, approximately 30 students in this area could actually walk to Lincolnshire Elementary School via safe route to school, similar to the students in this area right here that currently walk to Lincolnshire Elementary. So that was recommendation number 1 for Hickory Elementary. Again, it took the majority of the students from this area. The second recommendation, recommendation number 2, reassigned 0 students from Hickory Elementary to Williamsport Elementary. This was one of the administrative boundary adjustments that we talked about. You can see this is kind of the north, I apologize. You're good. Behind. This takes the northwesternmost portion of the attendance boundary. Again, and it's the same as what we presented back in October. I should have pointed this out, pages 36 through 47, if anyone wants to go back and follow through. But this pretty much includes Lennox, FedEx, Solar Farm, a couple hotels right in this area. Really, this area only has 4 residential addresses. And this came about from our transportation department. They said, hey, if and when we ever get students from this area, it would be a lot easier and a lot quicker travel time and a lot more efficient for us to come right down Hopewell Road, right to Williamsport Elementary School, rather than going over to Lincolnshire or Downsville Pike. So that was one of the considerations. The students within this area currently attend Springfield Middle and Williamsport High, as do the students from Hickory Elementary that were in recommendation number 1. These students would still continue to attend Springfield Middle and Williamsport High. They would now go to Williamsport Elementary, which feeds students to Springfield Middle, Williamsport High, and Clear Spring Middle and Clear Spring High. So again, nothing changes for the students in the secondary nature of these recommendations. Moving on to recommendation number 3, it reassigns approximately 29 K-5 Lincolnshire Elementary students to Bester Elementary. The 7-year average for this area has been 26.3 as they reviewed it. Again, this is a very steady area. The important thing to note about this area is Lincolnshire Elementary currently sends students to Springfield Middle, Williamsport High. And this little teal area up here is the only area that goes to Western Heights Middle and South Hagerstown High. So it currently sends students to 2 middle schools and 2 high schools. Moving this area over to Bester, Bester sends students to South Hagerstown High, so that would be the same. Bester sends students to Western Heights Middle and E. Russell Hicks High, so they would be going to school with them. It would take Lincolnshire from feeding 2 middle schools and 2 high schools down to 1 middle school and 1 high school. So all of Lincolnshire, based on these recommendations, would just go to Springfield Middle and Williamsport High. This area is right off of Burhans Boulevard. Right down here would be kind of the Amazon warehouses, kind of the Lowe's department store. It's bounded to the north and the east by railroad tracks. Again, the committee thought this would be a good way to do it, and we had the capacity at Besser to handle these students. So this was part of the rationale that is identified in recommendation number 3 as the committee reviewed it. Moving on to recommendation number 4, it reassigns approximately 281 K-5 Lincolnshire elementary students to Downsville Pike Elementary. This number has been decreasing. As you can see, it started off at 337 and gone down to 281. I'm going to talk about why. This area is basically the entire Lincolnshire area to the east of Halfway Boulevard. And as I'm going to zoom in, I might go back. This area includes the Nolan Village development that's existing. Nolan Village a few years ago went through and created McCleary Hill, which is in Jonathan Hager. It sent a good number of residents over to that development, and it went from 250 residences down to 116. That's what's currently coming out of there, when before it used to be 250. They're proposing to rehab 68 of those units and build 48 new. They're going to end up at 116. So what we're seeing right now is what we are going to get. However, when they do the rehab, we won't see as many students out of there for several years. Obviously, you can't have people within buildings when you're rehabbing the facility. One of the considerations this committee considered when they sent this to Downsville Pike and considered that 100% K-5 capacity. It was one of our talking points. The other thing the committee considered was this Virginia Commons Phase 2. Virginia Commons Phase 1, you can see it, it's being built today. 36 single-family homes, they are in process, they're probably about halfway through. Virginia Commons Phase 2 is this entire field here that's right behind Ted's Bennett Center. It is a total number of 372 single-family homes. After our October meeting, one of our committee members works for the city and came in and said, hey, the developer left Virginia Commons Phase 2. We talked to the developer, he had. It currently does not have a developer. We don't know if Virginia Commons Phase 2 will happen next year. We don't know if it'll happen in 15 years, kind of like the Arborview development we're going to talk about, kind of like King Road or TT&K down in Boonesboro. We don't know how quick. We've been keeping the facility committee abreast of this situation as we become aware of it. But the committee looked at that and said, boy, this could potentially generate an extra 160 students if it comes to fruition. Well, Lincolnshire is already at 5 rounds. Lincolnshire already has the run at Elizabethtown proposed to start in the near future right here. This alleviated some of that potential risk that we could see in the future moving forward. We have the ability to add a 5th round out at Downsville Pike if and when we ever see Virginia Commons Phase 2 come off. So the committee looked at this and came through and said, boy, if we can add it, that would be the time to do it. We'll wait and see if we need it or not and go from there. That was part of the overall rationale for this particular consideration. To go back and touch in, all of these students within this area currently attend Springfield Middle, Williamsport High. Downsville Pike only feeds to Springfield Middle and Williamsport High based on the current number of recommendations. Moving on to recommendation number 5, it reassigns approximately 240 K-5 Fountain Rock Elementary students to Downsville Pike. This number over the last 7 years has been 216 for the last 7-year average. It's been increasing a little bit, and some of that is due to the Elmwood Farm development. I'm gonna grab my pointer again because I can't do this. I'm too short. I'm sorry. Okay. Elmwood Farm development is located right up here on this side of Hopewell. So that's been causing some of the drive, but that development basically is just about built out. There's only a few residential units that remain. The remainder of this area is all kind of rural farmlands. It comes down to just north of Schaefer Road over a little bit. This is all the existing Fountain Rock. So all these students come here to Fountain Rock. They would now just go a little bit further north to Downsville Pike. And then, of course, this area also considers the Oak Ridge Apartments and the Town Oak Village in the north area. All of these students currently attend Springfield Middle and Williamsport High. Again, Downsville Pike attends same as middle schools. Nothing changes for any of the students in any of the recommendations for the middle and high school boundaries. Recommendation number 6 reassigns approximately 37 Fountain Rock Elementary students to Sharpsburg Elementary. This particular area has had a 41.6 average, so it's been pretty steady. It came down this past year. As we look at this, this is the most southern portion of the existing Fountain Rock Elementary attendance zone. And this was based on a discussion with our transportation department, and they said they could definitely see some efficiencies in transportation and help with ride times for students of this area to send them to Sharpsburg in lieu of going back north to Downsville Pike. It would help with some of the ride efficiencies in conjunction with recommendation number 8 that we'll get to here in a little bit. Students in this area could basically come down Sharpsburg Pike or Mondale Road right to Sharpsburg Elementary. And when we get to the end, I'll show a map that shows kind of the entire Sharpsburg Elementary. But again, this is a pretty rural area. A lot of farms, not real high development, not a lot of number of students. Students in this area currently attend Springfield Middle and Williamsport High. They would go to Sharpsburg Elementary, which currently sends students to Boonesboro Middle and Boonesboro High. So it would take Sharpsburg from a 1 middle school, 1 high school feeder pattern to a 2 middle school, 2 high school feeder pattern, similar to many of our other schools, and still much less than a lot of others that we'll talk about here in a minute. So I'll come back to that on recommendation number 8. Moving on to recommendation number 7, revised. As you can see in the upper corner, this was revised from the October report. It's found on pages 102 and 114. So we've identified this as revised for everyone because the committee wanted to make sure they were very transparent to the public. They presented one thing in October, they're presenting something different now. They wanted to make sure this stayed very apparent. They didn't want there to be any confusion. It would have been very easy to include this area in recommendation number 5, and they chose not to. They just decided to keep this as recommendation 7 revised. So in October, this originally proposed to send this area over to Rockland Woods. However, when we saw the enrollment this year at Rockland Woods, we know Westfield has built out. We know Carriage Hill Phase 2 is coming down the pike. We looked at what would likely be happening to the enrollment projections. The committee said, well, let's not fill up Rockland and make it worse. It's already 5 rounds. We're 4 rounds out here. We'd rather come to this facility and using the capacity that we're building here. So they decided to revise it and send these students from Fountain Rock to the new Downsville Pike Elementary in lieu of Rockland Woods as they had originally proposed. The number has come up a little, but again, this particular area is all rural. It includes Rikard Road, goes down through, sorry, I gotta check my cheat sheets. It's a lot of information to remember. It comes down here. Basically, it would come up and go Hopewell up to the Downsville Pike. And again, this includes the area where Fountain Rock currently is.
So this is one of the changes.
This is the only change from what was presented in October.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And again, that was based on looking at the new enrollment and taking into account how it would likely impact the enrollment projections that we'll see in the next couple of weeks coming out.
Okay.
These students currently attend Springfield Middle, Williamsport High. They would continue to attend Springfield Middle, Williamsport High. Again, Downsville Pike, that's the only school, the only feeder pattern middle school and high school that it would send to based on the current recommendations. As we move on to recommendation 8, this is a recommendation that reassigns 21 students from the Rockland Woods attendance zone into Sharpsburg. And again, this is the southernmost portion of Rockland Woods. Rockland Woods currently feeds to 3 middle schools, Boonesboro Middle, E. Russell Hicks, and Springfield Middle, and 3 high schools, Boonesboro High School, South Hagerstown High School, and Williamsport High School. The students in this area would continue to go to Springfield Middle and Williamsport High. That would not change. They would just now go and utilize the available capacity that we talked about at Sharpsburg Elementary. Again, one of our newest facilities. This recommendation, in conjunction with recommendation number 6, which was over here, and I'll show at the end of the presentation, would provide more efficiency for our transportation and better ride times for the students. And the committee, again, looked at the available capacity at Sharpsburg, and then they looked at the ride times and took transportation's thoughts into account when they were deliberating on this. For reference, this is really Sharpsburg Pike. The majority of the homes are kind of here, a lot of farmland in this area. Here's the Ag Center, for those that would trying to get an idea of where this is. But these students would basically come down in conjunction with recommendation number 6 right to Sharpsburg Elementary. Moving on to recommendation number 9, this is part of the enrollment relief for Emma K. Daub. It reassigns 64 K-5 Emma K. Daub students to Besser Elementary. The 7-year average for this particular recommendation right here, was 59.1, so it's been very static. This is a area north of Wilson Boulevard. So one of the things that the committee looked at with McKay Dowd beyond its 114% projected state rated capacity in 2027 is that there's currently a Scarlet Hills apartment. If you drive down Potomac Street now, you'll see it being built. There's currently apartments being built directly across the street from McKay Dowd that's going to push the enrollment up further. The committee took that into account and they looked at this particular area. This particular area used to attend Bester Elementary. Back in 2016, it was reassigned from Bester at the time to McKay Dowd. So that means if you were a kindergartner in 2015 and you were moved to McKay Dowd as a first grader, when this takes effect, you would be a senior. So we would not be moving anybody twice. This would be well beyond, this would be a full career before we've had to do any type of moves from this area. Within this region, currently all these students are bused down to McKay Dowd. Approximately 15 of these students in this area could walk to Bester along with some of the other students that currently walk on Guilford and Chestnut to Bester from this particular area. So again, the majority of the rationale for this particular recommendation was to utilize the capacity that we have available at Bester and to reduce the enrollment stresses that we have at McKay Dowd, along with the known development that's occurring right across from McKay Dowd right now as you drive down Potomac Street.
So would they be walking the McKay Dowd, the ones across from McKay Dowd, would they walk?
The Scarlet Hills Apartments would, yes. There's a light there. I believe that is a safe route. Yes, sir. Moving on to recommendation number 10, it reassigns approximately 41 K-5 Potomac Heights Elementary students to Pangbourne Elementary. Potomac Heights, ironically, is projected to be 114% of its K-5 state-rated capacity in 2027. It's funny how that kind of worked out the same as what McKay Dowd's was, but that's the current projection. This area is actually the Cortland apartment. So I'm going to zoom in. I'll come back. But this teal area is 1/3 of the Cortland apartments, and they go to Potomac Heights. The white area is 1/3 of the Cortland apartments, and they go to Pangbourne. And the pink area is 1/3 of the Cortland apartments, plus all the Cortland villas up here, and they go to Paramount. Back in 2016, this was split 3 ways to all 3 schools based on the number of students that were generated from this area. To help relieve Potomac Heights and based on the available capacity at Pangbourne, the committee suggested reassigning 11 of the apartment buildings right in here, right behind the Lowe's and the Green Turtle, down to Pangbourne Elementary. So now that would take Cortland Apartments from splitting 3 ways down to splitting 2 ways. The first question that the committee asked, and Christina and Joe are probably going to smack me if I don't bring it up, is can we get the entire development into one school? That was the first question we got from the committee, and unfortunately, right now, we do not have enough space. What we came back and said was if we ever do a replacement school number 2, where we replace Fountaindale and Potomac Heights with a larger facility, that is likely the redistricting effort where we would look to try to get this entire community into one facility. Unfortunately, we just don't have the space to do it right now. However, the committee agreed, as did instructional staff and transportation, that splitting this community 2 ways instead of 3 ways was much better all around. It could reduce a lot of confusion for everyone. So, and again, that's talked about on page 141 through 153, but that was an important discussion point from the committee when we discussed this decision. Students here currently attend Northern Middle School, North Hagerstown High. They would continue to attend Northern Middle and North Hagerstown High. Pangbourne splits 2 ways right now to Northern Middle, North Hagerstown High. They also send some students to Smithsburg Middle, Smithsburg High, so there would be no change for Pangbourne. Recommendation number 11 is an administrative change based on the Arborview development. This is 0 students currently, and there's been nothing generated. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to this development. So this used to be the Black Rock PUD development. Many, many years ago, 15 years ago, when it was called Black Rock PUD, and it's been dormant for 15 years. The last Board of Education said, okay, our existing middle and high school boundary line is right here. We want this to go to Eastern and Ruth Ann Monroe. And it was strategically placed in Ruth Ann Monroe and Eastern's attendance boundary based on the capacity when we added Ruth Ann Monroe primary. Just this past year, maybe a year and a half ago, Black Rock PUD development sold to a different developer. It is now named Arborview. Where we were originally projecting 595 students all in this area up here, north of our boundary line, with just green space down here. No impact. We let it be. It wasn't a big issue. When it sold, the developer came in and said, we're going to combine both parcels. We're also going to increase the density from 595 to 648. And by the way, we're going to put a bunch of houses down here. So now we have a community kind of like Cortland where it's split. The committee looked at this and said, this would be better to go ahead and make this adjustment and send students from this area here to Ruth Ann Monroe and Eastern as originally intended, since it has now changed. Students from that area would, in theory, attend Boonesboro Middle, Boonesboro High. Of course, you can see it's all grass right now. Ruth Ann Monroe and Eastern do send some students to Boonesboro Middle, Boonesboro High, so there'll be no change there. But again, they thought it would be better to go ahead and get it not split for the elementary community.
Is that going to be single-family homes or a combination of townhomes, or is it going to be like Cortland, where we would actually have apartments?
I've only seen single-family homes, but they've been of the duplex nature. So they're not formally townhomes. They've been some that are duplex.
Okay.
That's what I've seen so far. That could
No Section 8, nothing like
no,
that?
sir. No, sir. Yep. But anyway, this was one of the administrative adjustments that the committee looked at and said now would be a good time before we have anybody generated, before we have to move schools, to go ahead and send these students over to Ruth Ann Monroe and Eastern. And again, that's the same as the October report that we presented with the preliminary recommendations. Recommendation 12, I kind of had to barter with the committee on this one. This has 2 students, 2 residential addresses. They wanted to name it Chad's Mistake recommendation, and they laugh about that. I had to fight them and say, no, we're going to call it recommendation number 12. We don't want to do that. But back in 2016, when we were doing some redistricting in this area, we didn't know that these 2 parcels here had a right-of-way that came to Route 11. We didn't know it. In fact, we didn't know it until 6 years later in 2022 when I got a call saying, hey, I got kids, and they're telling me I go to Fountain Rock, but you got to send me out to Route 11 to get picked up. And I'm like, I didn't even know there was a right-of-way there. Had we known it, we wouldn't have recommended this at the time. Again, we didn't find it till later. If not enacted, it might not come up again for another 6, 10, 12 years, who knows? But now would be a good time to go ahead and make that change. We are currently allowing special permission for the 2 students of this area to go to Williamsport Elementary at the request of the current residents. So it does kind of make sense to go ahead and maybe make this change now while it's in good faith and before we see it change hands and potentially impact someone else. Again, might not see students here for many, many years yet if the house doesn't change hands. Recommendation number 13, again, this is the same as the October 7th preliminary report. However, the committee listened to comments from the board's work session, and of all the other dates, they met the charge and said they would be effective 2027-2028 school year. The committee decided to leave this up to the board. They said it's to be determined. They don't want to make a recommendation, but they did want to go ahead and try to prevent a future redistricting effort. So they recommended reassigning 130 K-5 Salem Avenue Elementary students to Jonathan Hager Elementary, but did not recommend an implementation date. They're simply just saying this is the recommendation to do it with the planned addition at Jonathan Hager. And I'll go back to that, but the area that's currently in discussion, the 130 students, is south of West Washington Street. It's part of an existing neighborhood, Merbal Avenue and Mount Bala Street. This neighborhood ties into here, south of West Washington Street. It was kind of the intent all along that it could eventually go to Jonathan Hager once we had capacity at Hager. Once we identified this project, it made it kind of an easy thing to pick out. And this entire region here was part of the old Winter Street. So when we closed Winter Street many, many years ago and opened Jonathan Hager, we only had the capacity to take this piece here. The plan was always to come in and help our transportation out once we had the capacity at Hager to help this area out and help these students out and help Salem out. So this was necessitated by the Kilpatrick Woods development, which is right across the street on Salem Avenue, where we have 241 single-family modular homes being built. If you drive down Salem Avenue right now, before you get to the elementary school, or if you turn at the bank and go down the street, you can actually see the site work. It's more site equipment than what we have out here for the new school, but they're going up. They're modular houses. Now, that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to sell instantly, but that means they can go up quicker than what a conventional stick-built house can. When it comes to fruition, the 241 homes will likely generate around 104 elementary students is what we're anticipating. It could be more if we see any type of subsidization from that region. We haven't been told of any yet. But if we would see it, it could become more problematic. So this recommendation, the goal was to start off a potential future redistricting effort by going ahead and identifying the area, letting everybody know, hey, we're building capacity at Jonathan Hager. This is the place to do it. As far as when it's to be enacted, they're going to leave that at the discretion of the board. Within the Jonathan Hager Elementary project, we have the ability to add the correct number of relocatable classrooms if needed, but we also don't have to. Again, it's entirely at the discretion of the board. Okay, the last recommendation, the new one, is the easiest one. This was me going to the committee when we went back and met. This is 0 students from Pangbourne Elementary to Potomac Heights. The facility committee is aware of this. We got a development in called the Eastern Boulevard North Duplexes. It's like 30 duplexes that's to be built right here across from Potomac Heights. Took it to the facility committee. I saw the plan. And I said, boy, this is kind of weird. They have no area for a bus to turn around. They have a bunch of duplex developments right here on Eastern Boulevard, right across from Potomac Heights. They have just parking back here, but we'd have to do bus pickup off of Eastern Boulevard based on what the conceptual plan currently shows. I took it to our transportation department. I said, what would be easier, going to Potomac Heights or going to Pangbourne as you currently have it? They said, oh my gosh, Potomac Heights would be so much easier because we could pick students up right here at Eastern, stop traffic, get them right at the driveway. We could come here, we could pick up the students over at Hillside Manor and go to Potomac Heights. We took that to the committee. The committee's first thing is we don't want to impact existing residents. Let's make the recommendation now. If the development never comes to be, we just moved a bunch of grass and trees into another attendance zone that had no effect. If it does come to fruition, it's only a couple students. It won't severely impact Potomac Heights, especially because we're taking Cortland out of Potomac Heights. So they just thought this was another administrative change to go in and consider. Students in this area are not generated, so there's none. But if they were there, they would attend Northern Middle, North Hagerstown High. They would continue to attend Northern Middle, North Hagerstown High. So kind of going through, and I can put this down finally. All right. In the appendix, and we did this for both the board and for citizens that want to follow along, we did a before of every attendance zone. So we have Bester Elementary as it sits today, with recommendation number 9, providing enrollment relief to Emma K. Dowd. You can see that comes in here. And recommendation 3 from Lincolnshire that again adjusts the secondary feeder patterns for Lincolnshire. It takes it from 2 down to 1. That would be the new Bester Elementary attendance zone as outlined in teal. Emma K. Dowd Elementary, again, we have the new Scarlet Hills apartment right across the street from it. This recommendation would take the area that used to attend Bester back to Bester and provide enrollment relief to that facility utilizing the capacity at Bester. Looking at Greenbrier Elementary, again, no students here. This is just taking the former green area of Black Rock PUD, now Arborview development, taking it over to Ruth Ann Monroe and Eastern as originally proposed. Jonathan Hager Elementary, with the addition, is going to come and it's going to take this recommendation 13 area here into this and provide enrollment relief to Salem Avenue. The current Lincolnshire Elementary, again, we absorb almost all of Hickory Elementary attendance zone into Lincolnshire. Some of the students in this area, the south of 11, that could walk with other students currently in Lincolnshire. We take the 3 large developments currently in Lincolnshire, which is already at 5 rounds, and we bring them over to Downsville Pike, which we could add a future round if we need it. If this Virginia Commons Phase 2 never comes to fruition, we don't have to do anything. but if it does, we have the ability to add on out at the school out front. So again, this was part of the rationale for this area coming south and going to the new Downsville Pike. And then the last piece of Lincolnshire I already mentioned, going over to Bester, and that was really just to kind of clean up the secondary feeder patterns. Looking at the Pangbourne Elementary Attendance Zone, the current Pangbourne Elementary Attendance Zone coming up, picking up its third of the Cortland apartments up here. And with this recommendation in, it now takes 2/3 of the Cortland apartments, but then it sends out the last recommendation, this new Eastern Boulevard duplex, if it ever comes into vision. Again, this is just to help with our transportation efficiency later on, no students here, and that's just consolidating the development up for recommendation 10. Potomac Heights, same recommendation over to Pangbourne, and then the recommendation number 14 coming in, creating the new attendance boundary there. Looking at Ruth Ann Monroe and Eastern, again, this is going to be the Arborview development. The majority of the Arborview development up here, this just cleans up the elementary attendance boundary in this region, sending those students as well to simplify transportation efforts. And then the Rockland Woods Elementary Attendance Zone, providing a little bit of enrollment relief. And again, this is recommendations in conjunction with number 6 over here to utilize the capacity that we have at Sharpsburg, Sharpsburg being less than 80% full right now. Again, between recommendation 6 and number 8, we will be utilizing the capacity at Sharpsburg. Salem Avenue, again, Kilpatrick Woods development currently underway here. We would take the southernmost portion and stop it at West Washington Street, sending that back to the new Jonathan Hager once the addition is completed or before. Sharpsburg Elementary. Sharpsburg picks up recommendation 6 and recommendation 8. Recommendation 6, the southernmost portion of Fountain Rock, the southernmost portion of Rockland Woods. Again, we have the capacity at Sharpsburg. There's no development within the Sharpsburg region, and it's a very long region. However, now we kind of stretch north as far as we currently stretch south, but we're utilizing the capacity that we already have, and it's our newest facility that we built. It's also, again, a little smaller than Downsville Pike and some of the other facilities. It's only a 3-round facility, so that's going to be more in line with what Fountain Rock currently is. Williamsport. We have the 4 residential addresses up here with no students currently. Again, the FedEx, Lennox, kind of those areas, the solar farm. And then Chad's mistake, or as they made me write it, recommendation number 12, coming over for the 2 residential address points there. Looking at Hickory, I said we absolved the Hickory attendance zone. It's done on 2 recommendations. The first, of course, going over to Lincolnshire. The second coming down to Williamsport. And then as we go to the Fountain Rock Elementary Attendance Zone, it was 4 recommendations. And again, this could have been combined with recommendation 5. The committee didn't want to do that. They wanted to make sure they acknowledged there was a change from the October presentation. They want everyone to be well aware of this. So that's why it has been designated as 7 revised and wasn't just 1 single recommendation. So 5 and 7 revised, both would go to the new Downsville Pike Elementary School. Chad's mistake, number 12, over to Williamsport. And then recommendation number 6 down to Sharpsburg Elementary. And then as we go through and we look at Downsville Pike Elementary is made up of 3 recommendations. Recommendation number 4 from Lincolnshire that contains those 3 developments, Nolan Village or Martin Heights. It includes Virginia Commons Phase 1, which is currently in progress, and it's 36 homes there. It includes Virginia Commons Phase 2, the large development that may or may not come to be, but if it does, we have the core space at Downsville Pike to handle that growth. And again, they kind of thought that was reasonable planning to consider moving forward to maybe prevent having to do another redistricting. And then it picks up the balance of the existing Fountain Rock Elementary Attendance Zone through recommendation 5, and now 7 revised. And again, 7 revised based on the enrollment we're seeing at Rockland Woods, as Westfields has built out, and a couple other developments from that region that may or may not come into fruition. And with that, this committee has fulfilled its charge to the Board of Education via the monstrosity report. It took a while to write it. I tried to capture all the thoughts and discussions and points of the committee. Of course, the committee reviewed the report, but it is long, so we tried to set it up so it could have some existing simplification for those that don't want to go through everything.
And I think I'll close up with the board. Good afternoon. With sort of your next steps. At this point, the superintendent will go through a review of the committee's reports and is planning to provide his recommendations back to the board during the April 21st board meeting. Staff will distribute the report to the impacted schools, and we will provide notification to parents and legal guardians of students that are affected by the potential changes. Copies of the reports will be at all the schools then for parents to view at their pleasure when they want to take a look and see exactly what is in those recommendations if they've not already been following it to this point. 2 public hearings have been scheduled. They are May 13th and May 14th, right here in this room with overflow in other rooms here, should we need it, at 6 p.m. both of those evenings. That's a Wednesday and a Thursday night in the month of May, followed by a board vote, potentially either May 19th or June 16th, depending on the board's deliberations and how much time the board needs to make that decision. Your options are to accept or to modify the superintendent's recommendations. It is worth noting, per policy and COMAR, that if you were to do something different, you make a modification, you want to make a recommendation that's not already been presented, that needs to sit for additional public comment before it can become official. So just so you're aware, you still are in the power here. You still can make decisions as you see fit, but it does have to go through another public comment process should you decide to do that. And for the community, all public correspondence related to these recommendations should continue to come to public feedback at wcps.k12.md.us. And with that, I think we turn it over to you and our committee co-chairs if they want to make any comments, or board if you have any questions.
My only comment is thank you. I can't even begin to imagine how much discussion took place in order to I mean, it's just so very well informed. Thank you so much for your work.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for the opportunity to go through each and every one in detail. It was definitely decisions that we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to come back and say, well, what, too many questions. Transportation, the fact that we communicated with them pretty much for everything to get their input was helpful also. So we thank you.
You can tell it was very thorough.
Yeah, it was. Good job, Chad.
Very well thought out.
Yes. Well, thank you guys. You definitely did quite a bit of work, as it's quite obvious here. And I know especially the FIAC committee, you guys are volunteers. So the time you guys put into that is extremely appreciated. Really, really happy that you're able to serve the community that way. And definitely gave us the information we need to make an informed decision. So I do have one question. As I was reviewing this, one thought I had as far as Salem Ave and Hager, it seems like Hager is going to be more full than Salem.
Yeah, and that's why we were talking about the next round, that's potential going to be where we can put more kids. And then even when that happens, there's even more potential to do the portables or the classrooms that we can put outside, even if we need to do more kids. And we wanted to put that on your radar, even though this could be with all of these new developments coming or possibly coming. We wanted to put it on your radar. Even some were saying it's not really something we should worry about right now, but I think parents would appreciate the fact that we're looking further down the road because we don't want to disrupt families too much. We want to make sure that we take care of it now.
I think the other thing I'll just touch on is the number of students that we've moved. And one of the questions the committee asked was, are we moving too many? Because obviously your projections for Jonathan Hager are already out there in the future. We know that there's some properties. If you drive past McDade Road right now, you'll see that the Bostetter Farm or Hager Meadows is starting to put in stormwater. We're expecting to see some homes from there. So in short, to your question, this would not put the proposed addition at Hager over capacity. We would still have the ability to handle the additional based on those developments, some of which are moving forward.
Right. Yeah. And so have we thought about maybe doing a temporary realignment? I mean, it's one of those things where you don't want to go and help out Salem, but then go and hurt Hager. Bester isn't exactly under-enrolled either, but is it possible for, should we see an issue with that to make a temporary relief before we're finished with Hager to say, maybe move, I don't know how many students we're expecting at that development, but maybe move the 50 students that might go there to Bester just for a year or two before we finish that Hager addition. Is that something that was thought about?
So recommendation 13 had 130 total students, which unfortunately we wouldn't have the ability at any facility to take that whole group. We would have to cut that up. Certainly something we could look at, just might be difficult when we come into the transportation aspect, having to send multiple buses and other things. The other option could be, we could wait, and this could be recommended to be implemented in 2028. The risk with that would be is if the Kilpatrick Woods development took off quicker and we started seeing students, Salem might be in a world of trouble. And I say that because back in 2004, 2005, when we renovated Salem, it was originally a 4-round school. It had kind of a small cafeteria, kitchen, and gym for the 4-round school as it was. Halfway through that renovation, they were looking at the additional enrollment that was coming from the Hager's Crossing development, some of the others that used to be in Salem Avenue. They said, the board at the time said, we're going to add a 5th round. Well, they added the 5th round of classrooms, but they were not able to increase the course space. So that created some issues. So even though Salem currently is 5 rounds, we have 4 relocatable classrooms outside of Salem right now, and it is pretty much busting at the seams based on the current enrollment. It also has some of the old Winter Street enrollment, which is part of the reason we saw the fluctuation in that lower area. We'll see those kind of come up and down without any development within it. So not even talking about the new Kilpatrick Woods development, we'll see some fluctuations from that range, which could be problematic if we were to look to go to an interim facility. With the new addition, we should be poised to handle it. I think you could probably easier do it and just delay it a year if you were worried about taking too much or creating issues over at Jonathan Hager. It might be easier. However, again, we don't have the ability to add any additional relocatable classrooms at Salem. So if we do see students generated, we're not going to have anywhere to put them. And that's the risk. And unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball to speak better to that.
I think maybe instead of utilizing another school, an alternate step on that recommendation could potentially be that you take a portion of that and you go to Hager right away. So within the work that we've asked BFM to do for the design of the addition at Jonathan Hager is to plan for a number of portables that we tell them we're going to need based on the capacity. That is still pending the board's decision on these recommendations. So if you're concerned about Salem getting even more overcrowded than it is today, the move is to approve recommendation 13 for August 2027, when all of the other moves make. Students would be in portables at the new Jonathan Hager site. We're planning for it. We're going to have portables anyway because there are going to be some classrooms that are going to be impacted. So we're installing some portables or planning to install some portables on the site as is. We would add more portables to be able to accommodate that additional student space. You have the larger core already. So you have the larger cafeteria, larger gymnasium, larger media center. So you have the ability to pick up those students today that Salem doesn't have, and you relieve Salem a little bit earlier. Again, you already have 4 portables at Salem, so you already have 80 to 100 students in portables at Salem Avenue that you might be able to alleviate the minute those 130 students come out of that school. So you're sort of shifting them, and it's a 1-year stopgap. You could potentially split 13 in half, potentially. Maybe you take the northern end of 13 and you send it to Hager right away. If you want to hedge, you could potentially look at splitting that where some of it goes in 27 and some of it goes in 28. And if that's something the board's interested in, staff could look at a recommendation on that for you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Once we start adding on to Jonathan Hager, what's the time frame on that?
We currently have it scheduled to open in time for the 2028 school year. So, and I say that, we would not begin any type of construction that could impact current classrooms prior to having the number of relocatables on site ready to go. So the way we're going to set up the construction schedule and the way we did it in the design is relocatables will go in first for the classrooms that will be impacted already during construction. And then if we would need additional ones, they could also go in right away too. So that would happen before we would even begin the regular construction of the addition at the facility. We're also planning to have very thoughtful discussions. We've already talked, I've been out, I met with Kayla. We're already talking about locations of relocatables, how to make sure that they're going to be safe. Whether or not this would be implemented early, we obviously want to make sure we're doing that for the impacted students as well. So yeah, we have a plan. Once we kind of know the direction you want to go, we will make it happen.
Great. I also want to say thank you, Mr. Criswell. I want to say thank you, Mr. Monte and Mr. Jefferson, for your hard work. I know this wasn't easy, but you've come up with a really good plan, and we thank you.
I think I want to say something real quick. I appreciate you thanking us, but I also want to thank the members of Washington County Public Schools because this information comes to us. So once we have this wealth of information, it makes it a lot easier for us to make our decisions. So when someone says, you know, this is the best recommendation to make this work, these people are the experts. This is why our tax dollars go to pay these well-trained individuals who work for Washington County Public Schools. So they make our job a bit easier. We do some wrangling, you know, and we do some, you know, needling and some twisting and some, you know, modifications. But our job is made much easier when we have all of the information and the information is accurate and we can see exactly how what we recommend will impact our students. Because we have the information in advance, it makes our job a lot easier. So again, I appreciate the work that's being done by the staff here at Washington County Public Schools to give us accurate and timely information to make these decisions and recommendations.
Agree. Agree.
We're certainly very fortunate for not only our volunteers, but our staff as well. So thank you for pointing that out. If no one else has any other questions on that, we appreciate your time. We'll let you get on with your day there, and we'll move on to our food and nutrition.
Thank you, President Evans, and I too want to express my gratitude for our citizen members, our co-chairs, and team. Thank you. Our next discussion item is a presentation of the single audit report, and I'll ask Mr. Prue, our Chief Operating Officer, to remain at the table, and joining him, Mr. Eric Sisler, our Executive Director of Finance. Mr. Prue?
Thank you, Dr. Savine. I think I will be brief. I'm going to turn it over to Eric. This is a great report, a great result out of this year's single audit. I'll allow Eric to give you the details, and my thanks to our finance staff for the work they do, but also all of our staff in our departments that manage federal funds, clerical staff, department supervisors, department directors, school principals that get involved, and some of their staff at the schools. They do the heavy lifting on this, and you know, we get the credit to stand up here and tell you the good news. So, Mr. Sisler.
Good afternoon, President Evans and board members. Here to present the results of our recently completed single audit. So just want to go over some quick highlights. The purpose of the single audit is just to review the organization's financial statements in compliance with federal funding regulations. The objectives are to ensure financial accuracy, compliance, and they review internal controls. And what this means to us is it provides a level of accountability, trust, and transparency, and allows us, and is a requirement, to continue receiving other future federal funding. So there were 4 programs that were reviewed this year, 4 federal grant programs that were reviewed as part of this audit program, with those being our Title I program that I'm sure you've heard us mention many times. It provides funding to bridge achievement gaps for some of our lower income families throughout our community. Title IV that provides academic achievement, and then the Emergency Connectivity Program was a COVID-related grant program that we received reimbursement for Chromebook purchases that we had made. And so that was one of the other programs that they reviewed. And then fourth and finally was the special ed cluster for funding that we receive for special ed students. The overall result of the audit was that we received an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the best result that we can hope for. And there were no findings identified by the auditors. So we're extremely happy with the outcome. And I'd like to just repeat some of the comments that Mr. Prue made, that I'd like to thank the accounting supervisor, Holly Donnelly, and the accounting team. But I'd also like to thank the program staff from Special Ed Title I office who were also involved with this audit in providing documentation and answering auditor questions. We couldn't have achieved this result without the teamwork of everybody. So if you have any questions, we'll take those at this time.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Did anyone have any questions?
How can you have any questions when it's perfect?
I was going to say the same exact thing, so. It sounds like all the questions were answered by the people that would hold your feet to the fire anyway, right? So, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. And now we'll move on to food and nutrition.
Thank you, President Evans and members of the board. Our next discussion item is Food and Nutrition Services Program Review. And it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Mike Ingley, our Director of Food and Nutrition Services, along with Dr. Chelsea White, Assistant Supervisor of Food and Nutrition Services.
Thank you, Dr. Safine. I think before they jump in, just as a quick overview, there's been a lot of questions, whether it's in general sessions, work sessions, business sessions, but also in committee meetings about the Food Service Fund, about quality of meals, about the possibility of universal free meals for the district. We felt it was probably right about time to bring in the Food and Nutrition Service staff to go through a program overview. There's probably going to be a lot more questions as you delve into this, but hopefully this is a real high-level place to get you started. Hopefully some news that will be beneficial to your ears as well as you hear about the work of this team. Mike?
Great, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and present. This presentation will talk about our current initiatives and our future initiatives. When Chelsea and I were putting this together, we said we could use probably 40 hours, but we're going to try our best to narrow this down to 20 or 30 minutes for you. We've provided some resources in your packet that we'll refer to throughout the presentation. It's meant to be interactive, so if you have questions, certainly feel free to interrupt us with those questions, and we'll have some time at the end. But we thought we would start with just a real quick, brief history lesson. The National School Lunch Program started in 1946. President Harry Truman signed the National School Lunch Program Act into place as a security measure to improve the nutrition of those school children. And they said that the World War II recruits were being rejected due to their poor diet. And that was really the genesis of the National School Lunch Program. Continued to evolve in the 60s. 1966, the school breakfast program was established through the Child Nutrition Act, and it continues to evolve throughout the 70s and 80s. However, during those times, the program was still really based mainly on calories and cost rather than a balanced nutrition. But starting in the 90s, 1994 was a really big benchmark. The School Meals Initiative for Healthy Children was introduced, and it was the first time that dietary guidelines for Americans was matched with the school nutrition standards. Fast forward then into 2010, and I think in my career, I think this was probably the largest change that I've ever seen, was the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. It significantly updated those nutrition requirements, increasing the fruits and vegetables and whole grains while reducing unhealthy fats. Fast forward to where we are today, and I want to call your attention, in your packet you have from Maryland State Department of Education memo SM 10-26, and it highlights a lot of the potential changes that we're following right now. The Department of Agriculture has announced that they will be going in depth and looking at these recommendations. We are following them very closely. We're actually working with Maryland State Department of Education. We're providing some comment and feedback that I'll share that with you in a few minutes. But in summary, that the meal programs continue to focus on student wellness, local food sourcing, expanding the access, so that the meals continue to be healthier for our children. And again, we're really looking at these standards that the USDA will be implementing And right now, there's a lot of comment that we're following. This next slide that I want to go through is really a summary of everything that food and nutrition has to balance to make a meal. It is quite a complex, large operation that we have to administer. And sometimes one small change can really impact that big picture. And I'll give you an example of that. We have already made commitments for food for next year. So any changes that are made now will be really reflective of 2 years from now. Everything is done so far in advance because of planning and procurements and the amount of food that school systems have to purchase. And so any of these small changes can really throw a big impact at that. And manufacturers are currently sitting back and saying, hey, are we going to be able to produce foods that meet these new standards? So there's a lot that goes into it. Everything starts with the USDA, and they're at the top in the center. They set the standards. The MSDE, Maryland State Department of Education, monitors the programs, provides us technical assistance. The local health department, we have to follow all the local health department rules and regulations. But I mentioned USDA and advocacy. A few weeks ago, and I'll call your attention in your packet to the second reference, it is the 2026 position paper. And the Maryland School Nutrition Association each year participates in what's called the March to the Hill. The School Nutrition Association as a whole comes up with the position paper, and these are the big bullets that we're going to advocate for. The three main points for this year was we need reimbursements that reflect the actual cost and the regulations. If we're going to be offering more fruits and vegetables and proteins, local proteins, those reimbursements need to reflect those requirements. And that's one of the things that we continue to advocate for. The second one was to protect and expand access to healthy school meals for all. It's important, with some of the changes that we're currently experiencing, our SNAP numbers are gonna decline, which could have impacts on our community eligibility school program, which could impact the number of free meals that we can provide to students. So protecting that program and those programs, it's important to continue to advocate. And lastly, is ensuring that the updates to the federal nutrition programs our standards are feasible. And again, I mentioned that with manufacturers. We rely heavily on manufacturers to produce foods that meet all the requirements. We can't do that locally from scratch. And if we don't have manufacturers that can produce those foods, it really becomes a hardship for school systems. So again, making sure that the standards that are set are reasonable. We're challenged with a majority of the food that's consumed by students is not at school. And so their palates, it's very difficult for a school to change students' palates. And if these regulations become so strict that the foods are not palatable for the students, we're fighting a losing battle, and we want to produce and present foods that the students will actually consume. And I know that with my own children, Dr. White has her own children now, and we're finding that's a challenge. I've been in this business for 26 years, and my oldest is 12. And I'm learning that it's very difficult sometimes with what we want the children to eat and what they will actually consume. But advocacy is extremely important to us, and we continue to do that. Staffing. We have limited skill staffing. We provide a lot of training to those staff, but again, when I first started in this business, there was a lot of folks that were in the business, that were cooks, that knew how to cook from scratch and cooked at home. Those days have changed, and one of the things that we're doing is providing a lot of training to our staff. We want to put the very best staff in front of our students, and we invest in a lot of training and a lot of programs to make sure our staff are trained appropriately. We need a lot of staff. We have over 225 staff to feed our children, a lot of children, in a short period of time. It is extremely important that we feed those children and do not impact the school day. And in order to do that, you need well-trained and a lot of staff to do so in a short period of time. Budget. A majority of our funding comes from federal sources. So we are handcuffed to whatever those federal reimbursements are. We have to make that work, and we have to stretch that dollar into so many things. And I'll give you an example. Currently, $4.62 is the reimbursement amount for a free meal. So that's all we get for a free meal, is $4.62. And to fit everything into that budget is extremely difficult. So again, as they increase some of these requirements, we are asking that the federal government make sure that they're increasing the reimbursements in lockstep. Parents, school board, we have to follow school board regulations and policies and your desires. So we're juggling all of these things into one. Parents, I know myself, I want my kids going to school and buying school meals every day. But if it's not something they like, then I'm fighting that losing battle as well. But I want to finish this slide on what I feel is the most important, and that's our students. We spend a lot of time every year meeting with different student groups. We just finished meeting with students at elementary, middle, and high. It's some of the most fun part of our work, although it can be scary because you put a group of students in front of you and you tell them, what do you like, what don't you like, and what would you like to have? And then I have to explain to them, well, you can't have filet mignon, you can't have lobster tail, while you may want those things, but we have to explain everything that we're going through today in a really quick, short period of time. But the one thing that this year's groups, they were great. Elementary students, I'll use Lincolnshire elementary students, we had 15 of them. Started off, what do you like? I love the chicken patty, and the next kid, I hate the chicken patty. The next kid, well, chicken patty's okay, but I like this. The summary of all of our student groups, and when we finished up at Smithsburg High School, and I said to that group, you guys, everybody must have had the same notes to tell us the same things. They liked the variety. And I hear that from my kids as well. It's when I went to school, it was this or this and take it or leave it. And my parents said, you go to school and you take it. Even if you really didn't want it, you took it. I think times are different, and variety. So it's important for us, and it really, what I heard from the students is we want even more. We love the variety, fruits and vegetables, and if it's not a choice that I like, the high school kids, they get 10 and 15 choices. And they all said there's never a day that we can't find something that we really don't like. They all appreciated the variety. There's definitely things they want. There's definitely things that they want that we can't provide. But hearing from the students, we talk about line speed and how quickly they get their meals and the things that they want to see from us. We spend time, I'll use North High as an example. We met with several classes. I know Chelsea met with Marcia Seacrest's class to talk about marketing and display and business side of food nutrition and things that they can assist us with. We were working with one of the culinary classes on a new ramen bowl recipe. And actually, we were working with our staff. We have a staff recipe development that we coordinate the two, students, staff, into our finished product. I think you guys have heard all about the Chipotle bowl that seems to have gone viral this year. That went through an extensive testing process behind the scenes, making sure that it's something that is palatable, that we can mass produce, because it might be something that looks great and this is amazing, but how do you make 10,000 of them in a short period of time? So there's a lot of things that go into presenting new recipes, new ideas, and it's all through collaborations with our students. That's something that, I know my kids are not in this district, but I oftentimes will take foods home that we are bringing in, that we're considering for our students here in our Washington County, and nothing will hit our trays if it's not something that I would feed to my own children. And I think Dr. White feels the same. Her children will be in our schools starting next year. She has twins. And I think she's going to talk a little bit about that it is important to us that we would not feed anything to the students of Washington County that we wouldn't our own. And, all of this together, when I entered this business 26 years ago, I had no idea that school nutrition could be this complex. And to achieve the nutritional, the financial, the regulatory, everything balancing this complex program, and oftentimes these are competing priorities, and so we have to balance all of these things to make the Food and Nutrition Service Department work. And again, I think that, we as a team really work hard to make sure that, one, we're not only putting the best food in front of our kids, but also the best staff. I think it's a great segue into Dr. Chelsea White's presentation, who again, she has her doctorate in nutrition. She has her own daughters that'll be in schools next year. She and I have had a lot of great conversations about as they've started to grow and eat. And she will come in and share with me like, hey, you want to know what they had for breakfast? And this is what I really wanted them to have, but this is what we ended up feeding them. And it's that balance. So Chelsea, I'll turn it over to you.
We're going to start with a quick video.
Million students eat lunch under the National School Lunch Program each day across the United States. And here in Washington County, we serve roughly 12,000 students on a daily basis. School meals play a powerful role in student success and achievement by providing nutritious meals during each school day. Under the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010, the United States Department of Agriculture regulates all nutrition standards for school meals. All food items must meet strict nutrient content, portion sizes, caloric, fat, and sodium guidelines. Every school offers 1 cup of fat-free or 1% milk. Flavored milk must be fat-free and meet calorie limits. The requirements are designed for age-appropriate meals for students. We offer 5 components daily: protein, whole grain, fruit, vegetable, and a milk. In order for a meal to be complete, each student must take a fruit or vegetable and ensure 3 out of the 5 components are taken. Food Nutrition Services is required to offer all vegetable subgroups, including dark green, red, orange, legumes, and starch each week. Fruit and vegetables are offered in a variety of fresh, frozen, dried, and canned forms. All WCPS kitchens are inspected and licensed through our local health department annually. All food nutrition staff are well trained, adhere to strict food safety and sanitation guidelines, and provide excellent service to our students. For more information regarding our menu, nutritional content, programs, special diets, and dietary restrictions, please be sure to check out our website or give our office a call. Thank you for the support, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you. As mentioned in the video, the standards are strict, and there's restrictions, there's minimums and maximums on calories, sodium, fat, sugars, and it is, like Mike said, definitely a balancing act between what we're allowed to serve, what the students like, and changing it up and keeping it interesting for them. We kept the video very vague. We actually filmed that a few years ago because the standards do change and they are continuously getting tighter and tighter, making it really hard for industry and manufacturers to keep up with those standards and for us to serve things that kids actually enjoy. As mentioned in the video, we serve 5 components at lunch: protein, grain, fruit, vegetable, and a milk. A few years ago, we made the change that students can actually take up to 2 fruits, 2 vegetables, and the entree plus a milk. As pictured, the red tray, our quote-unquote viral entree this year, the Chipotle Bowl, it's a lot of food. The students are able to take a variety. They can purchase additional items as a la carte. I think that all of us are proud of the items that we serve, the colors, the variety. All of our lines really have a lot of choices, and we encourage students to try things. There are certain age groups too that we have to adhere to: elementary, middle, and high. They have different portion sizes. Shannon Gronholm in our office is the one who takes care of all of that, and she does a great job. She attends conferences, taste testings. As Mike mentioned, we work with the students, and so much goes on behind the scenes from the time we're introduced to a product and then it ending up on the student's tray. The procurement alone here, and it's a lot. We have to produce a large amount of that food. We do try to offer the students a variety, like I said, but they're also not served a unit, much different than when we were in school. We follow offer versus serve, so students aren't served an entree, here you go. They actually get to select, and as Mike mentioned, as they get older, the selections are a lot more, but that also is to reduce food waste. So by offering them choices, we hope that increases the consumption and it's less food in the trash. We do have share tables at most schools, and that is a partnership between the custodial staff, principal, and our staff to encourage, again, less waste. Our staff is trained, as Mike said. They keep up with a lot of paperwork, from production records, temp sheets, ensuring food safety, but also tracking the trends. So we know that, okay, green peppers really are not a big hit, right? So we don't put that many out because we're a business and we don't want to waste that product. So our staff do look at trends and see what are the popular items, and that really does all go into play in terms of preparing the menu and the food that's put out on the line each day. In addition to the variety, as mentioned, industry is looking, and I think United States, the world as a whole, is looking for cleaner ingredients, which is great. I think everybody wants to know the food that they're eating isn't chemical laden. So we are also following that, and a lot of our products are definitely trending that way, which is really exciting. And in addition, lastly on this slide, we accommodate over 3,000 special diets in the county. Thank you. As Mike mentioned, we have a department of about 225 staff that we could not do all of these amazing things without them. Our management team consists of about 60. We have a kitchen manager at each school who is Serve Safe certified. In addition, they all have minimum number of credit hours that is mandated by MSDE each year. Really heavy emphasis on food safety. The breakfast and lunch program are really the meat and potatoes of our department. Each day, we're serving about 8,500 breakfasts and 12,000 lunches per day. In your materials in our packet, the fact sheet, it also has the specific dietary guidelines, because I'm not going to go over those in depth with you, and make note that they do change. But also you have a special programs matrix that lists each of our school and the special programs that they participate in. Each really depends on the number of free and reduced at each school to determine if they are program eligible. The community eligibility program has grown over the years. We now have 25 schools in our district that receive free meals every day. The fresh fruit and vegetable program, 7 elementary schools participate, and that gives students the opportunity to try a fresh fruit and vegetable outside of lunch. So in addition to all that we serve at lunch, it's typically served in the afternoon, separate from lunch, 2 days a week. The after-school meal program, a lot of people call it our supper program. It's not like what you think of like a spaghetti dinner. It's more of like an after-school snack. But we participate and have that in 32 school sites and 6 community sites. That is really awesome because these kids are hungry, especially if they're playing sports. So to be able to serve the athletes or other enrichment activities is amazing. And lastly, summer. Summer is a huge operation for us. In 2025, we served all WCPS school sites that participate, in addition to 9 community partners, which I'll talk about on the next slide, and 12 meal machine sites. The meal machine sites, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the program, but our meal machine van with our logo is out in the community serving at apartment complexes. We are at churches, at parks. We are trying to get kids access to food. We know that a lot of times the only time our students are eating is at school, and in the summer that's a huge problem. This summer, we are excited to announce that we are expanding, and we have 9 new meal machine sites. The team has worked really hard, worked on permission to expand that program.
Can I ask a question before you
Yes.
move on while it's here on this slide? Up at the top, school breakfast, 8,500 per day, school lunch, 12,000 per day. Is that, I just want to be sure I understand, that's what all of Washington County makes per day?
The average.
And then the cost of that is 1.5 and 2.2 million
No,
annually?
that's what it equates to total.
Total number of meals annually,
Right,
Yep.
right.
but not dollars and cents, just the total number of meals. So
okay.
8,500
That's
at
right.
180 days.
Okay.
Yep.
Does that include paid meals, people that are paying for their meals? Okay.
Next slide, thank you.
I do want to commend Chelsea before we move on to the next slide on the expansion of the meal machine. You know, when we created this, a long time ago with 2 sites and you know,
2012.
with a whim idea of not sure how this program was going to go, and to sit here all these years later and to see that we're over 20 sites in the summer. And you know, these are our children that desperately need our services, and they're our kids. You know, whether they're in the buildings or out in the community, they're our kids, and being able to service every single community in Washington County is extremely important to us. So hats off to Chelsea, and I was working with some of the folks in our office on that expansion.
I joke, maybe I'll share the map eventually if anyone wants to see it. It's just a piece of paper, and Chad Criswell actually helped a lot with his software and able to determine the clusters. And we looked at Washington County and where our gaps are, and that's where we have kind of put an emphasis on where we need to be or where we could expand. During my doctorate degree, I actually did my dissertation on child hunger, specifically in Washington County. And one of the keynotes and takeaways for me out of my research was the community partnerships and how important they are. These kids are not only our kids during the school day, but in the evenings, on the weekends, and we as a community as a whole have to do as much as we can to make sure that they have access to food. We have some amazing partners in this community. I'm sure you guys have heard of all of these. Boys and Girls Club, we service them and provide suppers every day during the school year and at their programs in the summertime, as well as the YMCA. Goodwill is a newer partner. They have programs throughout the school year and in the summer, as well as Salvation Army, Children in Need, HCC, Girls Inc., USMH. Parks and Rec and Meritus are newer partners. This year, Meritus has agreed to let us set up a meal machine along Robin Wood at their new university. And in addition to that, we're going to work with them because they have a food pantry program in the hospital, work on some brochures and just connecting the community resources. I think we all work in silos, and it really is about connecting the dots and communicating what someone is doing over here can reach someone over here. Thanks, Erin. In terms of national partners, we work with No Kid Hungry. They have provided so many grants over the years for us to buy additional supplies and equipment. They also host a lot of meetings where we're able to network with other LEAs in the state of Maryland and talk about some of the challenges that we're facing, best practices, we share ideas, and that collaboration and professional network is really impactful. Maryland Hunger Solutions, every year we participate in Hear the Crunch, raising awareness of hunger throughout the state of Maryland. The National Dairy Association, as well as School Nutrition Association. The School Nutrition Association, SNA, is a national nonprofit and network of school nutrition professionals. We are very involved in the executive level in the state, but we also have a local chapter here in Washington County that does a lot for the community as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Okay. All right, we'll wrap the presentation up talking a little bit about local and our farm to school efforts. And you know, some of the challenges that we face, of course, are the availability. When we're in school, things aren't growing. And so the seasonality and processing, processing fresh fruits and vegetables can be quite a challenge. Labor, the late cost of that labor and the skilled labor. But we want to look at what are we currently doing and what can we do? There's a lot of things we can't do, but just as we talked about, we have summer programs and how we can increase our summer local fresh fruits and vegetables. So I just wanted to highlight some of our current efforts. And Reinhardt Orchards, we currently buy all of our whole apples, and we've been doing that since Mr. Prue brought them in
10-ish.
Yeah, a long time ago. And last year, fun fact, we served 54,000 pounds of Reinhardt whole apples here in Washington County. We're working on an initiative to, we use a lot of sliced apples. So we're working on an initiative to figure out how we can actually slice the local Reinhardt apples instead of bringing in sliced apples from other places. That's one of our future initiatives and things that we're talking about. I want to call your attention in your packet. You have a memo from Dairy Made Dairy, who is our current provider of dairy. And we're pleased to announce that they are purchasing milk from a lot of local sources. Obviously, for food safety purposes, we don't disclose the exact farms that we're purchasing from because, bad actors can do bad things if they find out you're buying certain dairies. And so that's one thing Dairy Made does not release, but they can assure us they are buying from farms here in Washington County and locally. And you can go through, I think that they do a nice job at explaining why purchasing fresh local is so important. And also Hadley Farms. Now, we're purchasing a whole grain cinnamon roll from Hadley Farms. Those of you that are familiar with their fundraising program that I don't even think they do anymore, the 10,000 calorie cinnamon roll is not the cinnamon roll we're purchasing for our school breakfast programs, but it is made locally in Smithsburg. They employ local folks, and so that is another initiative of how we support local. We also have our current produce vendor, Greensburg Farms. One of the things that they do is they aggregate from local farmers. Of course, there's not a lot of large farms that can supply 13,000 servings of a particular item in a day. So they aggregate, and then we'll let Shannon know in our office when they have specials available, and we'll purchase those products and filter those out to schools. One of the things that we're looking at doing in the future is creating our own local symbol, so that, when we have a particular product, let's say broccoli. We serve broccoli all the time, but it's only available locally at a certain period of time. We would highlight it when it's actually local, and potentially even identifying the farm market where you can actually purchase some of those products, and providing educational materials to the kids along with our Tasting of the Month program that we're looking at doing next year. We have also been doing a lot of work connecting with local farmers, local community agencies, and a couple different groups that have been very intriguing to me. And we're exploring hydroponics. We've actually connected with an indoor grow facility that grows strawberries inside, and can produce those year-round. So that's a future initiative that we're looking at. And we're also looking at a local burger patty. We have someone that is very, very energetic, and I think has the right resources and pulling the right folks together. And I've spent a lot of time with this person and looking at how we can produce and pre-cook, because it's important. We explored many years ago, with bringing in raw proteins. And again, when you're bringing in raw proteins and you're trying to mass produce it, in a short period of time, it has a lot of challenges. But if you can take that product and pre-cook it in a manufacturing facility, freeze it, and then bring it into our facilities. We're looking at how we can close the gap with the funding gap. This person brought some very outside-the-box things to me. We actually spent a significant amount of time here a few weeks ago and are going to continue to do so, because I'm very intrigued by some of the outside-the-box ideas. Again, here's all the things we can't do. And I met with him and told him, here's all the things we can't do, but here's all the things that we could potentially do, but we can't do it alone. And so I'm really excited about the potential of working with some of our local folks to bring some of these things to fruition. I'll wrap up the local farm to school with some big news. And I got permission last week to share this. I'd like you to mark your calendars. We, along with the Maryland Department of Agriculture and MSDE, will be hosting the 2026-2027 Farm to School Kickoff event. And we have the Maryland Secretary of Agriculture scheduled to be here to speak that day. So please save the date, Monday, September 28th. More details to come on that. I want to wrap things up, and again, we've mentioned this a couple times, and all this information that we've presented, there's a ton of work that goes on behind the scenes. We have an absolutely amazing team. And team to us, I love sports, and I love leading like a sports coach. And the beauty is we are all here for the same purpose. And that's what we talk to with our team. You're here, we're all here for our students. And together, everyone achieves more in our department. We think of our work as continuous improvement work. While we think we do a great job, we're always looking to do better. And we're looking to improve, again, for our students. It's extremely, extremely important to us that our students deserve the best, because a lot of our kids don't get nutritional opportunities outside of school. So again, a huge thank you to all of our team members. If you see, I encourage you to follow us on Facebook. Chelsea does a great job with posting the things that we do for our staff separately from anything else. We do an Employee of the Month. We recognize our staff for the great work that they do, and we try to showcase the things that we're doing. It actually helps us because sometimes it creates competition amongst the schools. And look what they're doing over here. Well, we want to do that, and so we've seen a little bit of that. But I encourage you to come out and visit. I know several board members have been out, and we hear you have come out and have lunch. I encourage you any day to do that. If you want me to come along, I'd be more than happy, or anybody from our office, but go out and sample the products. I know I was asked if we were bringing samples today. Logistically, that's a little more challenging, but you're welcome anytime to come out in the schools and visit with us. And with that, I'll wrap the presentation up. If you have questions, I have time for some questions.
I have a question. So I know you cater to different diets. do you have to know ahead of time? Say like me, I have to eat gluten-free. So do you have things available, or do you always have things available? I think that's my question. So if I would come out with you and have lunch, would they have something gluten-free for me?
I believe so. Now, if you went to one of our schools that was not a cooking kitchen, it might be a little more limited. So we do know all of our students, let's say Pleasant Valley, it's a school where your daughters will go. It's a very small school. We transport to that site from Boonesboro, so it's logistically, every kitchen manager has a list of their special diets. So they would know, I have 2 people that need gluten-free diets, I need a dairy-free. If you have a visitor, it would be nice in one of those locations, but if you go to any of our larger locations, our managers have the allergen information for all of our foods and could make sure that they get you something that would be gluten-free.
Well, I know when I worked at Salem Avenue, occasionally I would order a gluten-free pizza, and they were really good. I really liked it. So, I know they have them, but I would have to order them ahead of time.
And I think too, like we have the special diets that are noted. Once a child has a note on file, it stays with them through 12th grade when they graduate, unless something changes and then they provide a note and it removes that. So our staff know the kids, and that's really neat. They get to know them, they know them, and that's really special to see, because I think sometimes, it can be a bummer if you can't have certain things. So the relationships with our staff have with the students are great.
Every cafeteria I've visited, the staff's been wonderful, and the kids love them. So, thank you.
Thank you. I have 4 questions. The first one would be, I have visited a few schools and some cafeterias, and they say they have a lot of waste. How are we measuring the waste at the end of the day, and what are we doing to incorporate those foods into a product that we can reserve?
It's a great question. I'll start with our share tables. Every school has a share table where it's temperature controlled and monitored, so that students are encouraged to take any item that's unopened that they don't want to consume to place on that. We temperature monitor, and if it's unopened, it can be reutilized. As Chelsea had mentioned, we operate offer versus serve. However, to make a complete meal, you have to take a fruit or a vegetable. So there are fruits and vegetables that do get wasted.
So how are we reincorporating those back into our food service?
There's time limits in terms of especially we do leftovers, but if it's only reheated once for food safety. So we have production records that we track, and that's where I'd mentioned trending. So kitchen managers can see, okay, the chicken patty was really popular, and they try their best to gauge their production based on needs, the demands, but it is really hard because kids change their mind. Also, when the menu changes and you have nachos competing against something else, that can also throw a wrench or be a variable. But for the fruits and vegetables, we use a DOT system, and we rotate inventory to make sure that fresh is out, and then we're only putting things out for the minimum number of days per food safety standards.
Let me be a little bit more specific. I know you give apples. At the end of the day, there's 30 apples on that share table. What do we do with those apples? I mean, other than reincorporate them the next day and give them out again, but do you slice those apples? Do you cook those apples? Do you put into some type of dessert? Can you do something like that?
A whole apple wouldn't necessarily be brought back in because it's been handled. If it's let's say one of our, a milk item that goes out is on that unopened, and it's been through our temperature control processes, that would go back into use. But if it's an item that, an apple, unfortunately, can be penetrated with something, you stab it with a pencil or something, versus our individually sealed items are a lot easier for us to bring those back. And we always say, when in doubt, throw it out.
Second item, you talk about staff training. What does that look like?
So I handle the training and development for the department, as a team, but our training is tracked. And so we all have different levels. So director level, supervisor, central office are required to have 15 to 18 hours of training per year. It can be management, food safety, human resources, and then our line staff or like our managers, food service assistants, and substitutes. It ranges from about 10 to 4 hours. Some of that is accounted for via Safe Schools and Vector Solutions, which everyone has to do. But then we have back to school trainings. So we see all of our staff at the beginning of the year, every year. Again, food safety is the biggest thing for us. Customer service, marketing. For managers, I would say a lot more around leadership, coaching staff, motivating staff, reinforcing a positive environment that trickles down not only through the staff in the kitchen, but to our students as well. But we record all of that on our matrix because we are audited. MSD will visit us and pull that information and kind of tick and tie that back to agendas per our training codes and make sure that we're hitting all of the standards.
We, can I add to that a little bit, is we have an onboarding, a new employee training program, a manager's training program. We used to call it the manager's, Kitchen Manager University. It's now called the Job Shadow Program. Allows the employees to go out and see what managers do. And then we have a whole process to train the managers once they're on board. We have seminars throughout the year that we'll host and provide extra training. And then we do a lot of hands-on training. We have 2 lead field managers that go in and they act as kind of a health inspection. They act as training. They meet with all new employees 2 weeks or so after they start
2 to 4.
to make sure that they're getting their training. We have a checklist that goes through all the things that managers have to train. We used to do a lot of that here, but what we were finding is, we would put them through all day of class, and just like myself, you give me an hour or two, and then let me get in there hands-on. It sets in so much better. We're using a series of videos that we have actually on our website. So a lot of different variations of the training that we're doing each year.
So you'd mentioned the staff wasn't coming in trained as, and I'm going to think back in the day when we had home ec, and we had ladies that would come in and be cooks from home. Are you training our new hires how to do that? I mean, obviously I know there's a lot of people, I owned a restaurant, they came there, they didn't know how to boil water. So you have to train them. Are you doing those type of trainings? Or are you more of how to prepare those foods that are already, ready to go? Is that what?
Mr. Gessard, you hit a great point. This is one of the reasons why, matter of fact, we're just testing our ramen bowl now that everybody's going to hear that we're doing a ramen bowl for next year. We were just going through the recipe development for that last week, and someone asked, we pulled out of the freezer the noodle, and it was perfectly cooked. And even myself, I'm not a good cook. When I started in Waynesboro schools 26 years ago, I came out of college and Golden Corral, and that's not chef school. But to your point, I had about 6 ladies that grew up on farms, and they taught me how to cook. I wish they were still living because they had a lot of great skills, and you don't find that anymore. But that's why we lean on these manufacturers, because for me to have equipment and staffing in all these schools, and then, and trust me, we did this, and it would be so infuriating, noodles or rice. It's something that's very, very simple. You'd go to this school, and it'd be perfect. You'd go to this school, and it was terrible. And because of that skill and that variation, we can buy it controlled. We know it meets the regulations, and it's perfectly cooked.
Okay.
And so the training really that we're providing is we're doing a lot of customer service. We're doing a lot on weights and measures, because a lot of our things aren't just slapping a scoop on there. It has to be perfectly weighted, measured. So a lot of the knife skills to process fruits and vegetables.
My third question, you had mentioned about policies. So my question would be here, what policies do you see as a roadblock to your success that we put on you, not the state, but what does the school system, that we may be able to help by alleviating a policy that may be able to help you?
If you could control the federal standards, that would
Not
be the
talking
biggest
about
help.
federal stuff, I'm not talking
Yeah.
about them, can't do
No,
nothing about
Mr.
that.
Gessard, I honestly
for us
don't know. We have to follow the procurement regulations, but that's for the entire board. Yes, I mean, when I ran a restaurant in Florida, there was a guy that would come off the farm from that morning. He would back up at our restaurant. You'd walk outside and I want that. 10 of those, or I'll take your whole truck. You know, we have to follow those procurements, but that's not something that I think that this board can change. You know, if there was this magic pot of money to allow us to serve more local foods. But again, I think, you know, one of my goals is I don't want to take away from general fund. And so if we can go out and bring in grants, if we can go out and come up with other ways to not have the general fund support the food service department.
I guess I misunderstood. I thought you were saying there was policies that we had on ourselves that we were kind of putting in front of you, and then you couldn't go any further. I was just wondering if there was something we could do to alleviate that
Nope, you're
policy.
just one of those facets that we have to work along with.
All right, and my final question, for example, what do students really want that we can't provide? Eating-wise,
More
food-wise.
sodium.
Well, and that's, we
sodium.
can't, yeah. And I know a lot of that is regulated. Of course, you know, I was in, you know, elder care, and we all had the same issues. I think Chelsea used to help us, you know, when we came Commission on Aging, she would come over there and go through our sodium intakes and stuff like that. So we all had the same thing. I just didn't know if there was something that we might be able to look in the future. You know, I mean, I was in high school one time, and I loved it when they came along with milkshake machines. And I mean, kids really look forward to something special that they, you know, and I didn't know if there was something that we could help that with that and try to overcome, you know, something that would make them a little bit more exciting, and they're asking for that we don't provide.
No, I think the biggest thing, we've often joked that the salt vending machines, you know, and that's where I made that comment about changing palates, even myself, you know, and I've gotten a lot better at not having a salt shaker on the table. But, you know, my palate is used to salty foods. And so the kids, you know, I forget one of the products that they were talking about, mozzarella cheese sticks. And they said, we don't really like those. So we went through that, you know, the restaurant mozzarella cheese stick is the full fat, the deep fried, the breading is not whole grain. And so those are the challenges that we face. And I think that's again why, you know, manufacturers are a little scared of, you know, we've come a long way in this program. Yes, when I started 26 years ago, there was products that I would not have currently given to my own children. But again, there's absolutely nothing that we are currently feeding our kids that I would not want my own kids to have. But it's a challenging balance to make sure. And I think like when we find a product like the chicken and with the Chipotle bowl, when we can, we're on it. I mean, and we spend a lot of time researching and looking at for foods. A matter of fact, we work with other school systems. I just hosted a group with Montgomery County, Baltimore County, because that's the beauty of when I came out of the restaurant business, you didn't call the restaurant down the street, you know, and say, hey, I see you got a line out the door. What's working for you? I'm not going to tell you that. Whereas school systems are sharing that information and working together to find those products to give to our students.
Do you all serve chocolate cake with peanut butter icing anymore? Man, I miss
They
that.
did when I did, man. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
And I think, you know, to your point and to your question, and Mike hit on it, you know, and you know, also from your time at Commission on Aging, and we worked together, you know, during that period, between meals to seniors and meals to kids are the most highly regulated meals on the planet. And not only just the meal itself, but the a la carte items are also regulated in terms of whole grains and fats and sodiums and so forth. So to even, you know, it used to be so that cake just sort of came with the meal. You bought a lunch, you could grab the cake on whatever day they had cake or Jell-O or pudding. Now there's not room in the guidelines for those types of products. So those are things that have gone away just out of necessity because they don't fit the guidelines, and they ultimately carry you over, whether it's the sugar level or the sodium level or the fat level. So
I will say, when you're in a nursing home, you can have whatever you want, because I worked there for 10 years, and the doctor said, hey, just give them whatever they want. And
I
they
feel
always
about
went
when
for the
I-
dessert first, so.
but I feel like when I visit my mother.
Yeah. All right, thank you, guys, appreciate it.
I just, you said that you require them to take a fruit or vegetable. Is that something federal says you have to do?
USDA standard.
But they don't help with the funding of that?
It's in order for us to get the reimbursement for that meal, you have to serve a fruit or vegetable. If you don't, then it's not a complete meal, and then that student that gets that free lunch now has to pay individually for those components.
You know, I think of McDonald's Happy Meals where, and they were giving out those apples for a while. My kids always ask for the extra French fries and not the apples. But I've been in a lot of these kitchens, and they're all really clean. You got good staff. And I just kept thinking of when I was in Greenbrier, how we would go through the line, and they would just stick that little metal tray of food on your tray, and that's what you got. And you say that once you reach the high school level, you're offering like 7 or 8 different options.
Sometimes 10, 12.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a lot when I think back to, I mean, we're not a restaurant. I'm just on this kick, and maybe it's not, of doing free meals throughout the system. And maybe that's why I asked about the 12,000 average per day. Anyway, I wish there was some way we were able to do that. And I think Ms. Beachley had a good point of, you know, if there was a way of creating one good meal, which would reduce the overall cost, that provided all those things that the government looks for, or maybe 2 meals. But to have all those options, I don't know. Anyway, that's just a comment. I would love to see us offer free meals throughout the system.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Burkett, the variety in and of itself doesn't cost more. The staff is producing, at South High, for example, maybe 1,000 lunches a day. They're producing 1,000 lunches a day, whether they're producing that of 3 different types or they're producing it of 8 different types, just lesser amounts of each of the given item. And I would argue that having those more options generates more sales. I think less options would generate less sales, and meaning that you wouldn't serve 1,000 lunches anymore. You only serve 750.
But could we afford to feed everyone if we were doing less? Just out of curiosity, and you'll know this, what's a meal cost? Maybe you'll know it, or maybe.
I think you said 462.
So 265 and 290 for the elementary and high school lunches is the cost that they would pay for us.
No,
But
I'm talking, what's it cost us?
462 is our break even per meal. About 50% of that goes to your labor, 40 to food, and 10 to other.
And how much do we get reimbursed of that?
462 is the
I
federal.
mean, I'm sorry, I asked terrible questions. How much does the government give us back each year? How much do we,
They give us 462 per meal. The family doesn't give us anything.
even for paid meals?
No, for a paid meal, so a
That's-
paid.
I guess that's what
yep.
I'm-
So for the federal paid, we only get 46 cents back for that paid meal.
I guess the better question would be, how much annually do we get back? If you're looking at the 2.2 million meals annually at $4.62, how much of that would come out of the general fund if we were?
So we actually ran some numbers, because I think we had discussed this a little bit in the Finance Committee. If we were, for instance, if we were to go with a free meal across the district and take away the paid version of the money that we get for students in our, give or take, 20 schools that are not in the Universal Feeding Program, that's about $1 million annually that we receive from families for paid meals, breakfast and/or lunch. And we would still, for those meals, only receive 46 cents from the federal government. So that amount wouldn't change. So we would have to support $1 million to the food service fund if we just wanted to go universal free across the system. Rough numbers, and there's a lot of it better analysis, but just thinking simply about if you're saying for the families that are not eligible for free or reduced price meals, that we don't want them to pay anything. The value of that to the food service budget is $1 million. $960, I think, per year.
At the current, providing 8 options a day,
Right.
it would cost us $1 million a year to supply every student in Washington County, knowing that not all of them are going to
Now, that's currently operating the program, though. If we would say, hey, we're completely out of the program, and we're going to offer whatever we want to offer, there's no rules, they don't have to take a fruit or vegetable, we're going to only do
No,
two,
do what we're doing now.
okay, then, yeah, you're at $1 million, you're at $1 million.
$1 million.
Yeah.
The risk potentially you're going to have is if you're saying to those 20 schools, you're no longer, you're all getting free meals, you're going to lose a portion of your people that are no longer going to file the federal free and reduced meal application, which means the reimbursement you're going to lose some full cost reimbursement on meals because you're going to have a lower number of students eligible. So you're going to pay more meals. The general fund's going to have to absorb more meals. And the greater risk of that is that's the same numbers of students that you have in the general fund for your compensatory education funding. So you potentially risk a larger loss of funding in the general fund and compensatory aid, not only while you're trying to also pick up the meals in the food service program.
We need to find a school system that's doing this and see how they're doing it.
Well, I would say it's easier to do in a state where free and reduced meals is not a marker for general fund revenue. So it is partially a state issue. Outside of that, I would say, let's go. But you'll potentially lose millions in revenue on the general fund side.
So thank you for presenting all of this. You know, I have a couple questions, and I will acknowledge like feasibility, and this is complex. I can definitely see that. One of my questions is about, you talk a lot about fat, calories, sodium. So it sounds like we look at nutritional labels and not necessarily ingredients. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just, you know, hearing about manufactured or pre-produced food, I always think about all the additives, the preservatives. You know, I can pull up a Yuka app and pull frozen food, and I'm like, why is there an additive or preservative in there? Well, they just put it in there, you know, and there's limited options that don't have that. So can you talk me through a little bit of that? Is that something we consider today? If not, is it something we can look at?
Can you re-escalate? So looking at the regulations, that are going to be the changes that come down, you know, might be the sodium, the fats, but you're looking at labels. I don't think that will change as looking at you know, we have ingredient fact labels and nutrition fact statements that we'll still have to provide and review.
Yeah, so for me, like when I go to the grocery store, for example, I don't look at calories, fat, or sodium. I could care less about those. I care about when I read the ingredients, if the food is something that would I have in my own kitchen, or is it a chemical or an additive? So that's kind of what I'm asking. Is that something we're able to look at, or do we look at today?
So the state is more concerned, in USDA really, with like the macronutrients. And I think that recent changes with the food pyramid are like you're ahead of that, right? Like you're conscientious in using these apps that show you these preservatives in your skincare and your food and what in our laundry detergent. But I think that, you know, we've tried like hummus, for example. Hummus is way better to dip your carrots in than the processed low-fat ranch dressing. Kids don't want the hummus. So we have tried to put those type of things on the line. They're more expensive, and kids don't like them. That's what we found, at least. We have tried some of those type of things, but I'm with you 1,000,000%, and think it's really important. And I personally am really excited as a nutritionist to see the changes, and I think it just is going to take a little bit of time for it to trickle down to us.
I think another key point on that too is that products that are made for schools that also have to meet the certain dietary requirements are not generally sold on the commercial market. You know, the product, let's say if we're talking about a chicken patty, for instance, it's not the same chicken patty that's sold in your local grocery store. And therefore, there's a lot of movement inside of that for cleaner labels, not just to hit the sodium and the whole grain and the fat, but also to keep it clean of the preservatives as well. So there has been a lot of movement. I've been out of it now, it's hard to believe, 9 years. But even prior to that, there was a lot of movement on cleaner labels for those very points.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, you know, chicken nuggets. I have a 5, 3, and 1-year-old. My 5-year-old pretty much eats chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. So when I try to make those things or buy those things, I try to find the lesser of the evils from a preservative perspective. So that's just something, I don't know if there's funding for that. I know it's more expensive. I don't know if we can even find it, but if we can find organic or less preservative and additives, I would just love to see that.
Yeah, and I think you are currently seeing that behind the scenes. And again, to your point, you're starting to see now in the stores, like we're already buying like the Frito-Lay products with no artificial colors and flavors. You're starting to see that now in the stores, which was always a big contention for me. It's like, schools are regulated, but the majority of the food is purchased outside. So seeing that we're all getting to be on the same page is going to help us a little bit.
We just introduced the protein packs, so I'm not sure if you, and Mike had said encouraged to follow us on Facebook. It's really hard for us to post these things on our website because I have to bug Aaron and Jess, like, can you post this picture for us? So Facebook is just easy for us to post some of our menued items and the fun things we're doing. Our protein packs are really popular, and from a consumer standpoint, like when you go to Starbucks or even Sheetz, and the grab-and-go merchandisers have fresh options. So even from that standpoint, you're seeing an increase, and it's awesome. But our kids see that too, like when they're traveling and going into stores, some of them at least. So our protein packs and some of those menued items, there is a shift. It's just a little slow.
There's a lot of discussion, and we're following this currently too, is the definition of processed. There's minimally processed, and then there's ultra. An Oreo cookie is ultra processed. The chicken that we're using in Chipotle, I believe it's 3 or 4 ingredients, tops. Chicken, water, seasoning, very basic. And that's one of the things that, yes, we look for is those clean label products.
Awesome.
Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. I do have one more, though. You mentioned a magic pot of money to serve local. What does that look like? Is there something that we can do to help find a grant? I mean, I have to think with everything trending more towards less additives, less preservatives, et cetera, we could maybe find a grant that would support even one of our schools to move towards more local, whether it's staffing to cut the fruit or whatever it is.
I'll get back to you. I'm pretty excited by some recent meetings that I've had. The one idea that I was like, man, I wish I would have thought of this, that talks about it. So I am currently working on an outside the box, something to get local funding that wouldn't take from the general fund.
Okay.
Always would welcome those. If somebody sees a grant or an opportunity, with grants, we are looking at that sustainable funding, and reoccurring funding that, grants are great for that infrastructure, get something off the ground. And we do have a few projects that we're looking at. But I also, like I said, I'm talking to a few people that seem to have the energy and some ideas to bring this all together.
Okay. And one more out-of-the-box question, maybe off the wall, I'm not sure. But I don't know if we have I know we have, I think, some culinary at Tech High, maybe. I don't know if we have any other schools, but is there any way for us to incorporate our own students? I know that they do some of the meals, I believe, but any way for us to, I don't know, have our students engaged in even gardening? I mean, it can be, that wouldn't get us a lot. That wouldn't get us 12,000 meals, I understand that. But just anything we can do to not only bring in local, but have our students involved in it. So when they do graduate, they know how to boil rice, or at least they have an idea of the food, because I know I did when I graduated. So can we do something like that? Have we thought about that?
I love our partnerships with students, and any of those things are possible. And I think I've explored a few things. There's some hydroponic businesses that are bugging us to potentially look at, these hydroponic, because hydroponics is that they're able to keep producing, and we've got all these indoor facilities that potentially could, supply us with fresh, local, year-round products. Absolutely.
Just a follow-up. I've always found that it was a lot easier in a kitchen that you controlled, that you could put ingredients in that's not preservative. So, I know we have a cafeteria down here that we don't use. I don't think we use that anymore. And I'm sure there's other cafeterias throughout the school system that they could be making some things that I think that would be, advantageous for us to reduce our cost. And we have staff I know that, it would be a teachable type thing. But, even if you're talking about cookies, we all know that Oreo cookies are crap. And if you make your own homemade cookie, you're not putting all that stuff in it. So, that's where I would like to see us go in the future, where we get back to doing some of our own cooking, within our own system. So I know that it would save money, in the long run, and it would also eliminate a lot of the preservatives that Mrs. Beachley was talking about.
Yeah, I'll share with you. So the kitchen that we have here, we used to service, the Commission on Aging contract, but also the employees in this building. When COVID hit, that contract ended and really difficult. Some days in this building, there's 200 people. Some days there's 10, and every single day it finds that we need staff out in the schools. It's really hard to have staff here producing food for the adults, and we're here for the
I'm
kids.
not just talking about adults, I'm talking about the students.
But we-
If they're making, desserts and they're putting out they're doing all the cookies for tomorrow and they're shipping it out to all the schools, that would be a preservative-less item that you're having to purchase, which is more expensive, and it would be something that we produce ourselves.
Yeah. Our new ramen bowl will actually create the base is something that we're going to be using a base that we buy in, and then we're going to be seasoning it to create that flavor with a low sodium seasoning, and then shipping that out ourselves.
I can't believe we're actually buying pre-cooked noodles and rice.
Yeah. But it's again for that consistency, the equipment, and to be able to then transport it out to all. I mean, logistically, doing it in one spot is easy. It's that mass
I
production.
think you also need to remember that we have, 45, 46 schools, and of those 46 schools, there's 12,000 meals every day. Could you imagine 46 locations doing 12,000 bowls of rice in a day? That would be pretty difficult like that, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I mean, you should be hiring people that know how to cook. And when you're looking at the big number, yeah, it sounds like a lot, but you've got 44 schools that's spread out over.
Yeah.
There may be a few board members who recall a time when the department employed a chef who provided that culinary training and created the menus based on, and we started to do more work on scratch cooking. We did some grants with USDA and MSDE with summer culinary boot camps and taught knife skills and cooking skills. And I'll be honest, it did not go well. We had a few things that went well, but by and large, it did not go well. Unfortunately, the community lacks for trained cooking and culinary staff, and the way that, when you think about, as Mike mentioned, we have 225 staff out in the schools, and I think, our restaurants are probably starving for the same level of staff that we are talking about. And so I think there's a challenge there, and there's a definite void. People don't cook the way we were raised, and how we all, our families cooked, our parents cooked, our grandparents cooked. Those of us that cooked, that's how we learned to cook. That's how I learned to cook, cooking alongside with my parents, starting at a very young age. And so hopefully I've passed some of that on to my daughters, but that's not the norm. And so it is very hard to find that staff and get them comfortable when they're mass producing. Rice, honestly, rice is very, very simple, but also very, very hard. The slightest things can go wrong with rice, and you either have paste or you have rocks.
Add whole grain.
Add the fact that it's whole grain brown rice, and just things like eggs. Eggs to me are easy. My wife always says, "How do you make eggs just effortless?" It comes with a lot of experience and a lot of training. Eggs can be really hard, and they can be really easy. And that's the nature of cooking. Some people can, and some people can't.
And one of the things we've tried to do is more of a hybrid, and we continue to look at, and that's what I think the ramen bowl will look at, is a hybrid to that scratch cooking. Again, we're buying the protein in pre-cooked. We're making that broth in that hybrid to keep it a cleaner label.
Well, we really appreciate your time in helping us out. Great presentation, and we are excited to see the changes. We know that there's always quite a bit of discussion about this, and you guys have shown that over the 6 years that I've been on the board, the menus have certainly changed quite a bit. So we certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Next, we'll move on to Healthcare Committee.
Thank you, President Evans. As you mentioned, the next discussion item involves some recommendations from our Healthcare Committee. I will turn it over to Mr. Prue, our Chief Operating Officer, who will introduce a number of our Health Committee team members that are present to provide this update.
Making sure the gang's all here. I think you know most of the members. I'll work from my left. Of course, Terry Baker, Executive Director of Human Resources, Cameron Shives, Budget and Financial Reporting Analyst. You may not have yet met Kathleen Boyer, who is our Supervisor of Employee Benefits, and of course, Mr. Sisler at the end, who is our Executive Director of Finance. Just seems like longer ago, but it was just a month ago, we had lengthy discussion about the status of our current healthcare plan and the health of the healthcare fund. We talked to you about a number of different things, and I want to kind of bring back a couple of those slides to remind you where we were a month ago. This is our most recent claims history over the 5 previous years and our projected end-of-the-year balance for the current fiscal year. As you can clearly see, the fund has gone from a healthy balance of $20.3 million in 2020, 2021, down to a negative $2.5 million in the current fiscal year. It's just a mere 6 years later. We talked to you a little bit about what changes were made in advance of this year. We made some changes to co-pays for medical office visits and for prescription drugs, and we also had the elimination of the GLP-1 weight loss medications effective 10/1/2025. And we talked about for the next year, beginning July 1, that we were planning a discussion with the Healthcare Committee to discuss additional plan design changes. We operate a Healthcare Committee. Mr. Sisler, Ms. Boyer, Mrs. Baker, and myself represent the board on that committee. That committee also consists of 4 members from each of our 3 bargaining units as we discuss plan design, plan changes, and just overall, how's the plan go? We review, if we get for instance, we get a report from Cigna every year in the fall that details all of our claims activity from the prior year, what it looks like, what are some trends that we can see, which pharmaceuticals are on the rise, which ones are on the drop. We go through all of that data. We share that with our Healthcare Committee. As we look at plan design changes, we met with the Healthcare Committee a couple of times in the last month, and with our assistance with the Arthur Gallagher consultants, we presented some proposed changes to the committee. The committee had a majority vote to approve the changes, and I want to outline those for you here. As you can see on the screen, we're looking at moving, we're starting with our HMO plan. This is a plan we call our limited plan. We're moving our deductible from 100 individual, 200 family, to 750 individual, 1,500 for family. The out-of-pocket maximum, this is the most an employee will pay over a fiscal year, from $1,000, $2,000, that's individual and family, to $2,000, $4,000, individual family. We're adding a coinsurance. That is after let's say I need to have an x-ray. The first thing I would have is I would have a deductible that would apply to that service, and then anything that is on that bill above that deductible would also be subject to a coinsurance. That's moving from 0% to 10%. As you can see, the copays for specialists and urgent care are remaining the same. And in the emergency room, it's currently been a $100 copay in the emergency room. That is moving to the $100 facility copay plus deductible and coinsurance. So any of the services you might receive, whether it's x-rays or blood work or CT scan, what have you, would be subject to additional fees. And the copays for prescription drugs are staying the same. Moving into our PPO plan, which we call our standard plan. This is split over 2 slides. We have an in-network and an out-of-network. Most services that our employees receive and physicians they see are in-network. Most of the large providers, as a reminder, we're with Cigna as our third-party administrator. Whether you're with Cigna, you're with Aetna, you're with Blue Cross. They have massive networks, so most of the work that or visits that our staff and their families receive our in-network. Here again, deductible changes from $200, $400 to $750, $1,500, individual and family. Out-of-pocket maximum increasing from $1,500, $3,000 to $2,000, $4,000. That matches the limited plan. Coinsurance also moving from 0% to 10%. No change on the copays. Same change on the emergency room with deductible and coinsurance applying, and no change in the current year on copays for prescription medications. We also offer an out-of-network coverage as part of that standard plan. Again, deductibles changing. That deductible has been $400, $800, moving to $750, $1,500 to match the others. Out-of-pocket max from $3,000, $6,000 to $4,000, $8,000, also to match the other plan. I do have a typo on this slide to make you aware of. Coinsurance is currently at 30% on out-of-network, and that is staying the same. There is no change. That's not a change of 0 to 30. That's a minor typo. It's 30 to 30, no change. In terms of physician's visits, if you do see a physician that is out-of-network, you have your deductible and then the 30% copay on that visit. Urgent care stays the same. Emergency room is the same, except that the coinsurance just is 30% here compared to 10%, just the difference from in-network and out-of-network. Typically speaking, an emergency room visit is considered in-network, I believe. And no change here on prescription drug copays. We're happy to answer any questions you have on these recommendations. And if there's concurrence to move this forward, staff will seek this as a business item approval for a change of the plan at the meeting here at the end of the month.
I just have a question about copay versus coinsurance. So copay is when I go visit a doctor, and coinsurance is if I have a service done, or how does that work?
Yep, copay is if I visit my primary care physician, I pay a copay to see them for sinus infection, what have you. But then if the doctor then sends me for blood work or an x-ray or something else, I would pay the deductible. And if there's an amount above the deductible, coinsurance would apply to that remaining value. So if I get sent off for $2,000 worth of tests, the copay is or the deductible is $750. After that, there's $1,250 remaining, and I would pay 10% of what the remaining value, so another $125.
Okay, so after deductible is met, a service gets coinsurance, a visit to a doctor gets copay?
That's correct.
Okay.
And all of that
Is
is
still-
capped at the out-of-pocket max, which is the most an employee will pay over the course of a plan year.
Okay.
Any other questions? So, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we added for this year's draft budget, we're adding $5 million to the medical insurance plan.
Correct.
So, we had a couple people, based on our previous discussion a month ago, we had some people who were upset with the way that discussion went, but I think when you go back and look at the history to our claims history, our balance went from, in 2021, from $20 million all the way, now we're $2.5 million in the hole, right?
Correct.
So we want to give more pay increases to our staff, but when we have to go and add $5.25 million to the health fund, it makes it extremely difficult to go and do that. And so with that being said, I think, based on what I'm hearing staff say, is that they would prefer the pay increase. And I think if we can cut down our costs to the healthcare, I think that would be a reasonable give and take. If we could go and maybe increase some of these other numbers a little more, like maybe the coinsurance or the out-of-pocket max or whatever, something along those lines, because, I think the people that use the healthcare the most still pay the same as the people that use it the least, and which is not very equitable when we go and look at people getting pay increases and all that stuff. So I want to try to be fair to everyone involved, and I think at some point we need to realize that you know, the times of the school system or the government covering the cost of the employee health care the way it has over the past century really just can't continue on when the cost of medical inflation has skyrocketed. So I don't know, that's more of a comment than a question. I just would like to see us increase something, maybe the copay to urgent care. I think that seems to be a little bit low. I think sometimes that gets overused. I'd be curious to see what our claims were in urgent care specifically. I think there's some other things that we can look at there.
We can get you that data.
Yeah.
I would also share that the proposals you're seeing, Gallagher expects that will deflect about 6% in plan cost to the fund. So, Eric and I were talking about that today, probably in the ballpark of $4 to $4.5 million deferred expenses to the plan. If we continue to expect that medical inflation is going to be in the 8 to 12 window or potentially higher, the 10% increase we added for this coming budget year and the changes that are proposed probably puts us, right about back to break even. So we're probably considering that this is something we may be looking at in terms of increases, might be looking at, for the foreseeable future. And I think that's the nature of healthcare in general. Again, just a comment. I don't know if that weighs on in anyone in any way.
And to your point, breaking even, quite frankly, is probably what we should expect to do. But when we're in the hole by $2.5 million, that doesn't put us in a good spot. If this was 6 years ago and we're breaking even, that's phenomenal.
Yep.
But this isn't 6 years ago, this is today.
What would that oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Something you shared with us, and I hope I'm not overstepping anything, but was how these compare to other counties and stuff. And this actually was still pretty good. Is that right, or?
Yes, what we shared during the last presentation was how our plan compared to Gallagher's national benchmark of K-12 districts on average. And this still beats that national benchmark.
How does this compare to like Frederick and?
Our neighboring jurisdictions do not have coinsurance. So I think that's something that will impact our employees at a greater level that will impact the Maryland counties around us. I also believe I don't have it off the top of my head, but I also believe our out-of-pocket max is also going to be higher.
There is coinsurance in other counties in
Right.
the state.
Yep. Howard and Carroll have implemented a coinsurance.
Do the neighboring counties have a health center like we have?
They do not.
So you mentioned something about us voting on something, it sounds like, when in the April business meeting or May. What do you need from us today to?
If there's concurrence for us to move the recommendations forward, then we can set that as an action item at the meeting April 21st. We would want to, if there's information the board needs that we can provide between now and then, we'd be eager to do that. Open enrollment opens in May, so I would rather not postpone a vote to the May meeting if we don't have to.
So first, before we get to that part, does anyone have any other questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
So if we use the health clinic, we don't have a co-insurance. We don't, anything like, if they do blood work and they do things like that, they do testing there, we don't have to pay for that?
They
So
don't have to pay for
The
it.
cost of the health center is borne by the health insurance fund, but there's no cost to the employee if they're using the health center. So there's no copay. If blood work's done, it's billed directly across our fund at the lower negotiated rates that Marathon has with, I believe, they use LabCorp.
Yeah, they do. Okay.
All right, so do we
I just had a process question, because I think Daryl had a good question, like, or thought, if we were to look at changing the copay for urgent care, what does that look like? I mean, are you going back to the committee to have a conversation? Did you already have that conversation and it didn't get majority vote? What does that look like?
We were told by Gallagher shared with us, we did talk to them about upping the urgent care and emergency room, which we've done in the past few years. We have upped that. They do not feel that's going to move the needle very much at this point. And because of the current status of the increase in cost for employees, it's not recommended at this point.
Okay.
And if you would make any changes beyond what the recommendation is, it's your choice at this point. The Healthcare Committee made their recommendations to you. We're happy to provide any information that you need, but it is your decision at this point.
Okay. It's good for me to hear that it won't move the needle. For me, I was thinking, okay, if you up urgent care, it would maybe push people to use the healthcare clinic.
And we
Just
did
instead of-
up
right.
it for that purpose.
Sure.
When we started the health center.
Okay, so
And
we-
it's maybe something that we could look at in the future, but right now, we are seeing our numbers steadily rise at Marathon Health Center, and we want to keep that momentum going. And so we don't think it's something that we should do. We don't recommend doing that quite yet.
I think one of the other concerns from staff when we talked about my recollection of our conversations a year ago on that copay, I think as staff, we were interested in going even a little bit higher this time last year. The health center is open, basically 7 to 5, give or take. I mean, the hours are a little bit different on Tuesday and Thursday than Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but not open on the weekend. And so we also did not want to, the conversation really wrapped around, but what do I do after the center closes at 5 o'clock on Friday until Monday morning if I need something? And urgent care is a viable option, keeps me out of the emergency room, which is much more expensive.
Of course. Okay.
And currently, we're talking to Marathon about some more extended hours. We're not to the point where we can go further into the weekend or another provider yet with our numbers, but maybe we're looking at the hours after hours, and there's more early morning use than there is evening use. So we're working with them to see if we can expand those hours to expand services and drive more people there.
So do we want to move this forward to the, without taking a vote? So, all right, so consensus is to push this forward to the April business meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Evans, the last item that we have for discussion includes a brief presentation update regarding FY27 draft general fund budget. 2 items of interest to the board, one being a reduction in funds we're anticipating receiving for next year regarding pre-K funding, and we also have some recommendations to capture the fewer dollars available for pre-K funding. And then the other thing that we have is a recommendation recognizing that the board has a desire perhaps to do a little more in some of your top priority areas. So we have simply a presentation, a recommendation rather, that captures for your consideration $800,000 that would allow you to reprioritize that funding. So that's the overview for the presentation. At this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Prue, Mr. Shives, and also our Mr. Sisler, who have all done extended work behind the scenes, and I appreciate their work in crunching numbers and putting the superintendent and this board in a position in a very tight year to provide additional flexibility so that the board can achieve its priorities.
Thank you, Dr. Svine. And to that end, Mr. Shives gets credit for doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, and also lengthy discussions with Kelly Longerbeam, Supervisor of Early Education, because that's, we looked at, well, it's pre-K funding that's getting reduced, so that seems like that's where we should go for some reductions. So just to give you a quick overview, in terms of why this revenue was reduced, the state legislature, through their budget discussions, had planned on funding all of Tier 2 pre-kindergarten for FY27. During those budget discussions, they decided to roll back the percentage. So basically, they cut Tier 2 in half. Tier 1 is up to 300% of the federal poverty level. Tier 2 is 300 to 600, and they rolled it back to 450 for 1 year as a budget-saving measure. I actually think they reallocated those funds into pre-K expansion grants for 1 year, I think to jumpstart some LEAs that perhaps are still trailing a little bit on their pre-K. It reduced funding for us for Tier 2 students by 94 students, which amounted to $933,000. This also, that's the total revenue loss for us. It is split between state and local sources, so it will be a savings to county government as well. As we look at those pre-K expenditures, the work here really is what were some things we were funding out of pre-K revenue that we could potentially roll back. We're looking at pre-K additional pay for roughly $50,000, instructional equipment, which was intended to enhance a playground in the coming year, for $30,000, moving 5 pre-K pairs worth $250,000, shift with 2 of those shifted to grant funding, removing 3 pre-K teachers with 1 shifted to grant funding. As you can remember, some of our pre-K funding this year is really targeted almost as special education early interventions at the pre-K and K level. So we're actually taking one of those program classrooms that was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cameron, but one of those program classrooms that was funded through some pre-K funding and shifting it to a 1-year grant. We anticipate this funding to be restored next year as well. There's a natural escalator tied to the blueprint per capita. So with that, we should be able to restore those positions to the general fund next year from the grant. We had 5 additional new assistant principals for the coming year. We're talking about reducing 2 of those new positions. And then we have a Judy Center coordinator that we fund out of the general fund, and we can actually split fund that, where half of the funding for that coordinator is paid by the Judy Center and half of it is paid by the Board of Ed out of the general fund. That's our in-kind donation that we're required to have to the Judy Center. So all of those reductions yield you the $933,000 that you see. Any questions on those reductions?
I'll say my concern with that is with our high numbers that we have in pre-K and the behavioral struggles we've seen, I have to imagine that's going to be a very big hit to the teachers in pre-K.
Well, and maybe let me be clear too. These are not existing positions. These are new proposed positions for next year that are being reduced. So no loss of positions. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't hurt. I don't know how much it helps. So, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and lastly, as Dr. Svine mentioned, maybe the board has had some thoughts about offering some flexibility. Staff has come together. I know there's been some discussion about summer school. And so the recommendation 1 here is to return summer school to the FY 2025 levels, which would eliminate the additional summer school that was added for elementary and middle schools. We would still operate summer school in those levels coming from this concentration of poverty grants. We did save a little bit. That increase that was added in the FY 26 budget was $450,000. We did save some transportation funding to support those programs that would happen under COP. So we did leave $50,000 for summer school transportation. Also, I know there's been several discussions about Chromebooks, and we plan a work session early May to talk a little bit about Chromebooks, but we proposed actually to reduce small computer equipment. This is a line inside instructional materials by $400,000. It does reduce funds available for Chromebook replacements in FY27, but depending on what the board ultimately decides, we do have some grant funds that are setting aside in the ECF fund that could be used to support Chromebooks if we decide to continue. We could support that at least for 1 year. And with that, we're happy to take any questions you have.
Mr. Pruitt, how much money would we save if we didn't have the elementary able?
About $500,000.
Any other questions?
Well, I was just going to actually, I had the number because I was like 500,000. I wanted to just make a comment that, one, I want to acknowledge that eliminating April would be not, I don't want to do that to the students that are in it, but I also think that right now it's costing us more than, I think we're spending 500,000 and only, what was it, 19 students that weren't already in school enrolled. And we sent out flyers to all the homeschool kids. And I think for me, at least looking into May and kind of what I would like to see, which is less technology, I just don't see the trend of homeschools, people wanting to decide to homeschool their kids, wanting to put them in front of a computer all day. And so I know this is just a conversation about budget, but I personally think that that might be somewhere we have to cut to reallocate funds. I don't know if my fellow board members agree, but it just doesn't seem to make financial sense, unfortunately, to me.
I will say that I agree with the amount of technology we do use in school. I think it is sometimes a little counterproductive. There's certainly overwhelmingly great uses for it in our schools, but I do think that some places, some cases, it might be overused. My concern is I don't think the ABLE program was ever really properly advertised, and I think when we got rid of it 2 years ago, we brought it back this year. If we get rid of it now, then it's going to be dead, right? We wouldn't be able to use it anymore. And for me personally, and I don't know how everyone else feels about it. I don't think we gave it the proper opportunity to succeed. And I think that it is a resource that maybe doesn't look this way a year or 2 or 3 from now, but I think it's still a resource that I would struggle to want to get rid of. So
I think that my problem with it is not only the cost, but the fact that these are elementary students who are only getting schooling online. They're not in the classroom. They're not getting the socialization. They're not, and I have a problem. I guess the parents don't have a problem, but I have a problem with the kids being online that much. I don't think it's good, especially for little kids, kindergarten through 5th.
And I think for me, you kind of hit the nail on the head. While I disagree with it, I don't want to go and pull that resource from the parents who do find value in it. I don't want to go and tell the parents what is best for their kids. So that's my personal thought process on it. I don't blame anyone for wanting to get rid of it, but that's just my thought process.
How many kids did you say
I would
took advantage of that last year?
50.
My recollection from the work session in February, I think that was 47 students enrolled, grades 1 to 5,
I think it was 49.
somewhere in there.
And it was like 12 or
2 through 9, or 3 through 5.
2 through 5.
It's 1 to 5.
We'll find out.
Would they have a
See,
principal and how many teachers?
They don't have a principal because they're supported by the principal at Smithsburg Elementary.
Okay.
It is 6.25 FTE teachers.
Just for that program?
Yes.
I think it's 5 grade level teachers and 1.25 encore teachers.
Right. 5 grade level teachers, 1.25 encore.
So what does the board want to do, or do you not want to make a decision on that yet? Do you have more questions?
I would like to say I'm okay with reducing the small computer equipment.
You're not okay with
No, I
reducing?
am
But
okay
but
with,
what about summer school funding? Are you okay with that too?
No.
No? So then,
is
okay.
it all or nothing?
No,
Is,
no.
okay. I'm just saying that that's one that I agree with.
most people, go ahead.
Was there did we get any numbers back on, how successful the program was for the students? I'm just thinking 500,000 is a lot to spend.
We shared data in the previous iteration of of ABLE, we could resurface that and send that back out. I'm not sure, it'd be too early, since it's a new year of a program and still only in the first year, I think it's too soon to say, here are the results in terms of, if you wanted to use, let's say, state testing as a metric, it'd be too early with those results. They haven't even taken the test yet. But we could pull the previous ABLE results if you wanted to look at the previous iteration.
I wonder what the teachers thought, how they felt about the program. I mean, that's who would know whether or not they felt it was successful or not.
I might have a question for Dr. Willow. So I know that we went over the behavior chart and what we can do legally, and I know that from 3rd through 12th grade, we can actually expel students. Could ABLE be used for students in that category who maybe have some behavior issues that we're trying to take care of?
So when we look at, I think I covered this a little bit in our last presentation when we looked at ABLE, yes, students can be ESE'd to an online environment before online. They could be ESE'd to an out-of-school environment. That's still allowable in the intermediate grades on. Just a couple other things I want to point out. If you recall from the presentation, we don't really compare, we do in the sense that ABLE versus what we see in a traditional classroom, but ABLE wasn't necessarily designed to replace what's in a traditional classroom. It was meant for students who had chosen for a variety of reasons to stay at home, be homeschooled, and to give them an option. It's not... If you have means and you have supports at home, homeschooling can be a wonderful opportunity for some students. It really depends on the supports you have at the house. But for other students, it can be challenging when the environment at home doesn't allow for homeschooling. And so this was a concept that was created coming out of the pandemic that was able to, for students who, for a variety of reasons, weren't returning, that they'd have another option to get education. It was never meant to replicate everything that happens in a traditional classroom environment because you're obviously limited with what it is online. When we did look at data, you'd have to go back a couple years ago, it was mixed. Some grade levels were a little higher, some grade levels were lower. It was dependent on subject. I think one ELA might have been a little lower, math was a little higher, but
Do you think it's a program that should continue?
do I personally think it's a program that should continue? Wow, that's loaded.
Well, listen, you're the...
So I would say that it comes back to where your priorities are. And so you have to look at it in terms of all of your priorities and where you rank ABLE in an online environment compared to your other priorities. And that's really for you all to decide where you see it. Well, and so...
Dr. Savine, do you think it's a program that should...
So, I think there are, again, benefits for some students. There are some counties that have online programs that are much larger than ours. It took time to develop. Mr. Evans is spot on. When you keep it, cancel it, go back and forth, you got to be fair to a parent who's considering putting their student there. If they don't think it's going to be around in a year, I don't know that I'd put my student there. So I think whatever decision you make, it needs to be consistent. Again, it's unfair, though, to probably compare it to what's happening within a school day to day because it's not the same. So you have to understand we're going to still teach all the core subjects, but the opportunities in an online environment, there are some things that you can do, and then there are some things that can't be replicated. So to me, it's not really being political. I see value in it. I don't know that I see value in it in compared to if you said to me, I know what we need to support our students who are special ed in our programs, and so for me, it's just a matter of, Mr. Burkett, where you prioritize it compared to the other needs. You've brought up other things. For ABLE,
Yeah.
it's all year.
All summer.
No, ABLE is our online program that starts the first day of school and ends the last day of school. Summer school for middle and high school, I want to say for middle school was about 4 or 5 weeks, I believe, from last year. Same with elementary. If you went back to FY25 levels, you would still have summer school, but it would be in your Title I COP schools. What you did last year was, by adding funds, allowed it at schools that historically would not qualify for Title I or COP schools. So you still had summer school with COP and Title I. Your additional funds allowed it to occur at the other schools that historically, don't have that funding.
So let's take a quick step back then so that we can stay organized here. So to give the staff something to go back with so we can go and potentially vote on the budget in 2 weeks, are we good with the balancing recommendation for the reduction to pre-K? Is everyone good with that? So we'll accept those recommendations for that, so that's good. Then let's go and look at the next one, which is the summer school funding. Ms. McCusker said she was not on board with that. How does the rest of the, do we want to reduce that summer school funding, or do we not?
I'm good with it.
You're
But
good with reducing it?
Can I
Yeah.
just ask a question? So we're talking about, so the 933 is from the reduction in revenue.
Right.
This is, what we're talking about now, these reductions, we would then decide what to do with them. So we might decide we're okay with this, but then we might not be on the same page of where it's going, or how to.
Would be the majority rules.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if so for me, for example, I'm okay with reducing both of these depending on where we're going to put the money.
Yeah.
If we're going to put the money in something I think is a lesser priority, then I don't know how you had that conversation, Daryl. I'm just asking.
President Evans, to Ms. Beachley's question, the intent here was to provide a recommendation to the board for your consideration. If the board was in agreement, this would capture $800,000 that then you would have to decide what priority. So I'll throw out a couple scenarios. Maybe it's, we've had discussion regarding special ed, case managers, maybe a portion of that is devoted to that, another portion enhancing the salary pool. Those are things that the board could decide at that point.
Yeah. Good.
So I'm just going to throw this out. I'm not for reducing the summer school program because I think it educates our students and it would help and benefit the computers. I'm willing to reduce that. But I'm not on the same board with the ABLE program, because although I'm not 100% supportive of ABLE, I don't think that we can judge ABLE just on 1 year. And we've ruined it by taking it away, starting it back up again. That program needs to go and be solid for at least 3 years so that people can see, through the period of time, what the outcome's going to be. So, and I've always said this about, programs that we do this to teachers, where we put a program in there and then 2 years later we come along with a new program, and it's deflating to a teacher, to have to start and learn something over again. It's the same way with the ABLE program. You can't start something and then take it away. And then when we did, and then we add it back, for me, it really needs to be there for 3 solid years. And then we can look at the numbers and go, okay. And I may not even be here for that anyway, but, for me, I think you should leave a program alone when you start it for a couple years.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So aren't we trying to basically balance the budget? Is that what we're doing? So we're getting less funding than what we thought. So we have to reduce someplace just to make up the almost $1 million. So this isn't, we're reducing this amount of money and now we get to spend it, right?
No. You already concurred, the board already concurred with the balancing recommendations, which is a reduction of $933,000 that puts us back at a balanced footing based on the reduced revenue. This next slide is, here are a couple of items that staff threw out there that if the board is looking for flexibility because you have something else that you think is a higher priority, you've got some money to play with.
Yeah, and just to further clarify, if it is the board's desire, this is just a recommendation of consideration that would capture $800,000. If there's a desire not to go that far and say the board's in agreement, sounds like there's a, agreement regarding the Chromebooks. That captures 400,000 that you could use with other priorities. This is just an option that gets it up to not quite $1 million that will allow you to address some of those other priorities that you may choose to address. But right now, you have a balanced budget.
Just focusing on these two, I think they do give us extra money for putting additional help in some of these classrooms. And that was one thing that I heard all the time in the schools. I'm not sure, again, I thought when we were talking about ABLE, we were talking about this summer school program, so I apologize. But if it's just, we're still going to have a summer school program, we're just reducing it back to where it was at certain schools, right?
Correct.
So we still have that program. And there is definitely a need for more teachers' aides or paralegals, not paralegals.
Parapros.
Parapros, yes, in the classroom. And so I'd rather see that on a year-long basis than some of these. I think everybody's on board with the computer situation, but I would also be on board with the reduced summer school to help put more I don't know why I'm saying paralegals.
Linda, how do you feel about the summer school?
I think I agree with it. Sorry, I'm agreeing with Charlie.
Okay. Tori?
Like I said, I'm okay with reducing these. I would also be okay with reducing ABLE and getting 1.3 to add to the salary pool as well as case managers for special ed.
How does everyone, so it sounds like there's consensus to move forward with these, with all three of these recommendations between the reduction of the 933 plus this. How does everyone feel then, correct me if I'm wrong, but how does everyone feel about the ABLE then? Do we want to maintain ABLE or do we want to cut that as well?
We're cutting it.
2 for cutting it. I'm for keeping it. That's not on there. That's something that was just brought up.
I kind of agree with Mike. Maybe you do need a couple more years to see how.
That's where my head is on it too. So, all right. So we'll.
That's 2-3, right?
What's that?
Is that 2-3
As
with 2?
go ahead.
Keep it.
Keep it. So I think that
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
So we'll go and. But I am very thankful for this conversation. I think that was a great conversation, even though we went about 3 hours longer than we expected to. I think this is a great conversation here, and it sounds to me like, unless anyone heard something glaringly different, it sounds like the recommendations that were presented to us just now, we would like to vote on in the business meeting.
Do we need to give some direction on where to reallocate them? Do we have consensus on kind of where that's going, or?
Yeah.
We need that.
Yeah. Now, I like the idea of looking at the case managers and the salary resource pool. So I know that's something that I think I've spoken individually about to some people. So would that be good?
For me, yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, does anyone else have anything for the good of the order?
Is there opportunity, to reduce the computer equipment fund even more? And maybe that's a conversation we'll have in May, but I guess it will be too late, actually, from a budget perspective.
We're going to have to make that May, because we'll have to look at what the model is and to know where we want to go as a model with Chromebooks. And so once we know the model, then you can come back and look at what the cost is of the model. I think that we'll look at, obviously, any purchases we make this year, we'll hold until we make a decision around that, and we can bring to you. We also have to look at it, not just cost, but one of the things we're working on now is to really understand the impact of curriculum. And so in some ways, we've purchased online resources. So what does that look like until that contract ends? So I think there's a short-term, long-term, but I think we need some direction on where we want to go with the model first.
And I think from a budget perspective, you could approve this budget with the recommendations that you've made and coming out of the discussion on Chromebooks and use of devices in May, if the board decides that they wanted to reduce, they found a middle ground, and maybe next year we're not going to use all the money, you could potentially reallocate that through a budget adjustment process in the year to feed another initiative.
Very good. All right, well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate everyone's input, and we'll meet in closed session about 10 minutes.